As in many religious traditions in the Jewish tradition, we also go through our scriptures, through the Torah, week by week, taking different selections. This week happens to be a very powerful section from Exodus called Mishpatim, which means judgments or rulings, and it's part of the covenant code. The people of Israel had just gotten to Mount Sinai. They received Torah, they received scripture and revelation at Mount Sinai, and now God is instructing the people of Israel about how, giving all the laws and rulings and decisions that will be necessary for building a civil society. I was thinking about that as I was thinking about coming before the county commissioning and offering a prayer, and realized how strong that is, what a message it is to this community and to this county commission as well, that's specifically what you are here to do, is to make decisions to make our county both beautiful and a caring place to live and to work. Mishpatim is a collection of laws and decisions, very much what you do. I was just looking through your agenda, and as you go from decision to decision, action to action, how easy it is with all of these little rules and laws that we see all over the Bible, or with the decisions you make, to get so lost in the trees that you forget about the big forest, the larger picture, that it is easy to go from decision to decision and lose what is going on in the whole county and everything that's going on, how everything is connected one to the other. So my prayer to you today is a hope and a prayer that you will take that opportunity for a step back and not just look at little decisions and big decisions as well, but think of them as each part of bringing our whole community together in peace and health and in fellowship. Oseh shalom bimromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. In Hebrew, that's the Hebrew for a very simple line. It says, maker of shalom, wholeness and completeness in the high heavens. And that might be God, it might be the force, it might be nature, whatever binds us together. We see a large picture of how everything fits together. Help us tune into that picture and work towards building that picture that will make Indian River County, Vero Beach, all of this county, and our community a place of shalom, wholeness, completeness, and peace. Amen.
Amen. Very well put, Rabbi. Will?
I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Under additions, item 4, under additions, deletions to the agenda, we have one deletion. Item number 9B2 has been withdrawn, and the sheriff wants to put on a item under emergency item 8A, 2006 and 7, 2006-2007 Victims of Crime Act grant. I think it needs to be in Tallahassee by February 24th, which is Friday.
I'd like to add something too. For discussion, and a request for the workshop that's scheduled on March 3rd for the new towns. Put that under my items.
Say that again.
A discussion under my items for the workshop that's been scheduled for the, I think Senate Bill 330, or Senate Bill 360, and also for the new towns. We have two workshops that day. I'd like to put that under my items.
I think that's proper. I think we can put anything under our items at any time. May I have a motion to approve the agenda as amended? It's moved, and I'll second it. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0. There are no proclamations, no minutes to be approved, which brings us to the consent agenda. Are there any items you wish to discuss?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to pull items P, Q, and R.
Whoa. P, Q, and R. Are there any others? I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
A motion to approve the consent agenda except for items P, Q, and R. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right, item P, which is on Schulke, Biddle, and Stoddard, Inc.'s request for final plat approval for a subdivision to be known as Citrus Springs PD Village E, page 136.
I'd like, and I guess probably the simplest thing is to talk about all three of these at the same time. And the biggest reason I'm bringing this forward is I've had the opportunity over the last 5 or 6 months to speak with some people that are homeowners out at Citrus Springs, and they're still having issues with this plan development as far as things getting done, as you all are probably aware, with some subdivisions that say they're going to do something and the developer never comes through and finishes it. And it hasn't been turned over to the homeowners yet. And in looking through the consent agenda item, I think they're trying to bond out on item P for $74,000. On item Q, they're trying to bond out for $67,000, and on item R, they're trying to bond out for $136,000. And I'm a firm believer that I think they need to have everything in place before we sit here and allow them to have final plat approval. And I'm just wanting to bring this forward, whether we approve it or not. I think there's some issues that we have with this development, and if there's a mechanism that we can hold them to it and not offer this, I don't know. That's what I'm trying to ask you, Will, I guess.
Up to about a year ago, we allowed final plat approval with nothing in the ground. In other words, they could bond out 100% of the required improvements. One of the changes that was made last year was not to allow final plat to be approved until at least 75% of the required improvements, which would be the streets, roads, sewers, drainage, landscape, were in place, allowing them to be substantially complete before they could sell the first lot. So that was sort of a major shift from past practice, where the paper plat was approved, they could sell houses before there was even anything in the ground. Now they're substantially built out, at least 3/4 before they're eligible to get the final plat. What you're suggesting would require another ordinance amendment to preclude final plat until a certificate of completion for all improvements was obtained.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I think, and Commissioner, I know exactly what you're going through, because I had a situation like this up in the north end of the county. But I believe that this is funneling under the newer ordinance with the percentage. I mean, I see 91% complete here.
Right.
Versus the old that you're.
No, this is under the new one.
Right, and so, I mean, it's your district, and I'll be more than happy to support you in the direction you want to go with this. But I would almost like to see some of these move forward to see if we need to amend our LDR further versus changing it before we really have the opportunity to see it.
Well, I think that the key here, too, and this is a big PD out there, and I think issues that we've had, I believe, and talked with some of the homeowners, that the developer won't return their phone calls. It's become that. Now it's that battle of, you do it, we're not going to do it, and we're going to turn it over to you, and these things aren't going to be done. And I know that becomes a whole different issue as far as the courts. I just truly believe that there should be a mechanism, and we've got it here, that these developers need to pay attention to these homeowners before they turn this thing over to the homeowners, and it becomes a homeowners association.
Sure.
And I know this is a formality. But I felt when all three of them were here, and I tell you, and I know Lou April's out in the public, who's been one of the gentlemen I've been talking with. It's a situation that's just as simple as a security gate, and I mean, that's minor.
Could you give us some specifics?
Yeah, I think
Are the problems in this subdivision, the previous phases, apparently? Okay.
And it has, and probably the simplest thing would be maybe for Lou to step up and give you an idea of what he's been going through with, and I know staff has done a tremendous job with, I think, tackling a lot of these issues, and a lot of them getting taken care of. And Lou, if Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind, if Lou comes forward and maybe explain some of the things.
By all means.
My name is Lou April. I live at 5550 Tangerine Manor in the Villas of Citrus Springs. We've had several problems. One of the problems that Tom talked about was the gate. It's supposed to be a gated community. I do have pictures here showing what the gated community is. There's a gate with nothing on each side of it. So what's the point of having a gated community? So you can.
Would you want to pass that up, or we can put it on the
It may be shown on the
overhead?
And I know, Mr. Chairman, these issues are minor, but this is unfortunate. These families think they're getting.
They're minor to the developer, but I know they're not minor to
Correct.
the property owners.
This will show up.
You know, in the past, staff hasn't reviewed it. It's been the responsibility of the homeowner association, the gatehouses. In the past, we haven't reviewed them. Now we've started to, even though it's not really under our authority. And I know a lot of the developers have talked to commissioners. They're unhappy that we're getting so active in areas that they feel that are beyond our responsibility. But we're trying to force the developers to we're getting involved in the guardhouses, the gates, which are not under our, our review when we do final plat. And I know that we've had 2 developers recently contact the commissioners because we weren't going to allow it because of the gates, even though they say it's beyond our responsibility.
So can I ask a question?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Wesley?
And I appreciate that to a certain extent, Mr. Baird, but I think whenever we have people come before us that are looking for answers, what really just, I guess, gets the hair on the back of my neck to stick up is whenever they feel like they're getting the government runaround. And I think that could quite possibly be what, even if we don't have the answers, we do have some responsibility to be able to try to get some resolve for the residents, and even if it is in private gated communities. And we've taken a long step. This is not bonded. This is irrevocable letter of credit. And I understand this is some leverage that we may have to help some of your constituents in the south end of the county. And like I said, I don't know what the answer is. I don't even know what would happen if, in the event that we decided to deny this or to postpone this until perhaps we get some resolve on some of these other issues. Mr. Keating, can you enlighten us on that?
I can't enlighten you on that. Will can, but let me just tell you, we do look at required improvements. We look at the road paving, we look at the drainage, we look at the landscaping, the required landscaping. What we don't look at are improvements that are not required, such as gates. A developer may make representations to buyers that it's going to be there, but nothing in our regulations say there has to be a gate there, and that's not included in a engineer's cost estimates for the improvements that need to be done for the subdivision. It's not what we're bonding out, and it's not what we would that we could mandate be put in place. So that's where the problem comes in.
Let me say this: that what we do, we've started looking at them and forcing them to. They consider these amenities, not so what they're amenities, and they say you don't have a place. Recently, we've made a couple of developers put their guardhouse on the plans and their gates on the plans, and we say that gives us the authority. So we're being very aggressive, and I think that's why you're getting some complaints from developers how aggressive the engineering department's now being with these.
And I think if you could...
We hear what the public's saying.
Heads up. Gary?
Yeah, and what I was going to ask is, Joe answered part of it, but, when we do a PD, I was under the impression that we probably had jurisdiction over every blade of grass in the negotiations that go in. And a part of that PD is a gate, and if we aren't doing it, I think we should. And, right down to design and what kind of bricks they're using on their wall, if that's the case, if we're doing a PD. Because, and as we grow and more of these developments come in, we're going to run into this more and more frequently. So, but I would assume if it's on the site plan and it's mentioned in there that they should follow through with it.
Good idea. Tom?
And I think the issue you have here, Kim, if you could dim the lights, and Lou, the picture that we see on the bottom is the gate that has been installed and has landscaping on the sides of it. Now, did the developer put this in?
I'm trying to show you 3 different pictures.
Right.
This is, there are 3 villages on our side of the street, and there's 4 villages on the other side of the street, all Citrus Springs. This is Key Line, and if you notice there's shrubs around the gate. The homeowners had to do that at a cost of $10,000. The homeowners paid for that. This is Temple Lake. That cost them $10,000 to put the gates up. The developer didn't do it. What's the point of a gated community? If you have a gate, if you don't have a gated community, is the county responsible for the streets? Are they private streets if it's not a gated community?
Not if they're private.
If they're private streets, no. If it's not a gated community and the roads have been deeded
So
over.
putting a gate up is so you can get around having the county be responsible for the streets.
No, it doesn't have anything to do with the gate. If it is private property or they're private streets, they do not have to have a gate, and they're still not the responsibility of the county. If it doesn't have a gate and they're private streets, we are still not responsible for the roads.
And this is, the villas of Citrus Springs.
Pull it down a little bit. There you go.
Good-looking
You
gate.
see, there's a gate there, but what they did is they closed the gates. They didn't notify any of the residents they were closing the gates. Residents did not have any means of getting in. The builder was still building, so the trucks went around the gate onto where the lake is, and all we ended up having was deep ruts in the road where all the trucks went and all the cars passed. Now the gates are left permanently open because there's no other way of getting in.
And I think, Bob, with this being a PD, I know in the plans, they probably showed these gates there, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know.
Actually,
And I know it's not our responsibility to have to worry about that, but unfortunately, we as commissioners sitting up here hear the end results of these things when they take place.
right, and on a PD, you could make it a required improvement, and you could make it a condition of the PD, and then we could enforce it.
I'd like to go ahead and
Yeah, I don't,
Yeah,
can we do
let's,
that now, though?
Mr. Chairman?
No.
I didn't.
Gary?
Yeah, I would like to also say that along those lines, you know, we ought to be looking at their advertisement and see if it's in line with the PD that we're doing and the brochures, because I tell you, if not, we're going to be getting into this more and more frequently, because they advertise stuff in their brochures and artist renderings that are never going to exist, and the developer knows that. Now, I'm not saying all developers, but and not just here, all over the country. And, you know, they pick names like Ocean View, and it's 15 miles from the ocean and things like that. That, you know, I just think that because, you know, we're doing more and more of these. If we don't, we're going to be dealing with this on a weekly basis.
And we are, until we get them all worked through the system. I mean, the Lakes of Sandridge was a classic example of what this is now. It's a PD or a subdivision that had the opportunity to be developed under the old land development regulations.
Well, I think what we've done by not, you know, they used to be able to sell them before they got the first piece of dirt turned. Now, I think the owner can, because of our new rules, can drive out, take a look at the subdivision and see what it's like. Before they were selling them, and they could under the old rules. We've changed the rules. I know I'm hearing from developers that my engineering staff is being ridiculously hard in the field on these. We have Jim Davis's staff has really stepped up. Their attorneys call and say, well, the gate is an amenity. You're getting involved between the homeowners association. These are amenities. We're taking an aggressive stance. But there's only so much you can do. I think the biggest thing we've done is not allow them to sell lots, and I think the person buying can go out there and take a look at the lot and see what they're getting. And hopefully that'll help a lot. But it's very hard to police brochures. We would never know what's out there. And I don't think we have the authority legally, and Will could get into that. But we're doing everything we can within our power.
I think with the PD would have the authority. And,
Yeah, that's true.
And also, I think that we've made some definite progress in protecting future homeowners with these developments. But I think there's always more that we can do. And after all, we're here to create bureaucracy, so.
Mr. Chairman.
Thanks a lot. Will got asked a question about what we could or could not do now with these three items.
Well, we've had a tension for a long time between what we should and shouldn't be involved in. There's a certain list of code-required improvements: the roads, the drainage, the sewer, the water, the landscaping. There are other things: fencing, gating, upgrades above the code minimums that the developer will sometimes show on a land development permit. And the question becomes, when they request a certificate of completion, what are we looking at? And typically, we look at what the code requires, and if that's done, they're given their certificate of completion, even though they may have shown a gate on the plans. We could probably bring back a land development regulation that said no certificate of completion can be issued until all improvements shown on the land development plans, whether required or not, must be approved before the certificate of completion could be released. That would cover the gates, the things that seem to be at issue right now.
What about these three items right now, today?
Right now, there's nothing we can do about that. they have met the code requirement for final plat to put in 75% of their required improvements. If they show, and I don't know if these three do show gates or not, they're not required improvements at this point, and we can't deny the plat approval because at this stage there's simply a marketing technique that have nothing to do with our land development regulations.
I hear what you're saying, but I think is the game is getting played, and not only here, but across the street at Legend Lakes we're having issues. If you remember the preserve, we had issues, and I see that one gentleman dropped out today. Frankly, I'm getting tired of not being able to help the homeowner when they're coming in and having issues, and we're going, we can't do anything. I think that's bull crap. And I think, and pardon my French, I think there comes a point in time that we need to play hardball with these developers. I don't care if they call in and say, you're being too hard on me. Tough. This is an issue now that these people have bought these homes. This is a gate that they call a gated community. It's a joke. This isn't what we want in Indian River County.
But that's not what Indian River County requires. The county doesn't require a gated community.
But this is a PD, and I'm like Commissioner
We've had
Wheeler,
a lot more discussion with PDs, but unless that was a condition going in, we can't retroactively apply a condition.
We're trying to help Mr. April. We've tried to help. We've been in contact. He's met with my staff. We're trying to help with their limited powers. We hope to turn this around, but we don't know if we're going to be able to. But we're trying and to work with the developer. I think they're getting the message clear out there that we're going to be a lot harder on it. Believe me, I get the calls from my desk. We are, and hopefully we can do as much as we can with them. They get attorneys and things get complicated, but we are attempting, and they know we're there.
What would happen if we just denied these three?
They would go to court, seek a writ of mandamus, say on what basis are you denying them. You'd have to show to you'd have to point to some regulation that they don't comply with, and we have no regulation that says you must install gates.
And I think more importantly, the issue is we're looking at something other than these three that's before us to deny. And I think if there's anything that should make the commissioners feel a little bit better about this is keep in mind that all we can do right now perhaps is to go after a bond for the phase that you're in. Right now we're doing irrevocable letters of credit, and that can be called in a matter of hours. Mm-hmm. And having dealt with one at Black Bear Reserve, the lakes of Sand Ridge, and seeing the differences between the bond that is not nearly as easy to call and to bring a developer to the table.
But if he doesn't do the gates, we can't call his letter of credit on the gates because that wasn't part of the required infrastructure.
Yeah.
Well, as you heard, homeowners had to pay $10,000 to $12,000 for the other gates.
The landscape.
Well, and I do think that we need to tighten this up somehow because unwittingly we're part of this problem, and the homeowners or the buyers, because they come in, they see the subdivision been approved by the county, they're told something by a salesperson that may or may not be accurate, but they think we're a part of it because we've been approved, and it's all sales techniques, and I think whether we like it or not, we're involved in it, and it reflects on us, and somehow with some wording in our PDs that, hey, if you're going to advertise it, let's put some truth in advertising. And if you're going to say you got gates, then it ought to be part of the PD, just like the landscaping or anything else that we require.
Well, we need to add the amenities as part of the infrastructure to our language in the code.
I don't have a problem making that a motion, Mr. Chairman, if that's something we need to make a motion to have staff bring back or add to.
Amenities and landscaping.
I think you want to be very careful with that. You're getting into clubhouses. You're actually getting into. I think if we're worried about gates and aesthetics surrounding like gates, maybe we could have a bond just for gates, have a separate bond that just for those kind of things. But when you get into all the amenities, you may never get out of those subdivisions, and they go into the homeowners association after a while. And I think we've got to be careful. I think we could work on trying to help this situation by if there is a gate that we're going to require a separate bond to make sure, put a bond on to make sure the gate and landscaping is in or something like that. But when you get into all amenities throughout the subdivision, that's covered under homeowners. Once a homeowners association takes over, I think but you will never, ever be out of any subdivision if you go that far.
Well, we can have it end when the homeowners take over.
Yeah.
I mean, you can word it where when the homeowner takes over, those things no longer exist. This is an agreement with the developer as he's developing the project.
You'll be in with pools, clubhouses. You will be into everything that is on private property. And I think what we're trying to do is make sure that things like the gate, the guard gate, which even though we have limited power, we are really forcing those issues. And I know that a lot of the commissioners got calls. We held up one for over a month until it got taken care of, even though it wasn't on the plan. And they had attorneys calling us, but we remained firm. So I think that's what we knew. I think you need to be, I can only say that if you get into that, we'll probably have to double our staff, and you'll never be out of it. And you're in a lot of private property issues. You'll be in fights in the clubhouse, what's being renovated in the clubhouse, what's being renovated in the pool, what's being renovated in the spa. I mean, you never.
Come later. Thank you, Joe. Yes, sir. Man at the mic.
My name is Tony Angelastro. I'm also a resident of Villas at Citrus Springs, 393 West Tangerine Square. You're our only resort to getting out clean with a developer that has lots of projects. Now, with all due respect to Mr. Baird, security is not an amenity. We bought into a gated community, not because of appearances, but because of security. Now, in passing an ordinance, you can just specify that the developer must live up to his plans regarding the gated community, the gated security. Clubhouse has nothing to do with this. Don't lump all of it into one. Now, we have turned to Mr. Lowther, also Mr. Wheeler. I like what Mr. Davis said. We don't like to be put into a situation where we bounce between two different parties. The gates are only part of our problem. It was touched upon that there were flooding issues and things like that. Tom has tried to help us. We have a pond, what do they call it, Tom?
Retention pond.
A retention pond. We can't get an answer from them as to when they're going to fix it. And it doesn't meet the requirements. So we turn to you. We don't look to change all the stuff that you have to go through. We're not looking to double the staff. We are people who moved into this area. We are responsible people. We're gullible people. We're naive people. We believe what is told to us. And when Gary talks about if they advertise, they should be held accountable. For instance, we started out at $150 a month 3 years ago. They can raise that monthly cost 10%. It went to $165. It's now $180, $150. Why? Because there was improper budgeting. So there are people who think that they're going to get all these amenities for $180, $150, but because the monies aren't there and they're not accountable. So it's not an issue of amenities. It's an issue of honesty, probity, and dealing with people who should get what they were promised. It's starting with the security gate. We should have a proper security gate. The pond should be fixed. There is a flood situation outside that we've not discussed yet with Tom, but those are things, and more importantly, we can't even get a proper accounting. There's monies missing. So we have a lawyer, and it may take years, but why aren't these people held? They're from Melbourne. They really don't watch and see what the management company does with our money. So we come to you, and we hope that you'll be able to put a little teeth into some of your ordinances. And I thank you.
Well, we're trying to do exactly that, but the horse is out of the barn in this issue at this time, I'm afraid. We can't do anything for you guys, except to try to put pressure on a developer with our staff and And I think the pond would come under health, welfare, and safety issue, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, well,
as would the gates. So why don't we lump this motion into that cloak?
Okay.
Bob, you have something?
I was just going to say, we'll check the pond.
I got a question, Bob.
Okay. Yes.
Bob, just, your memory's probably better than mine, but no? Well, maybe Stan will remember.
Probably not.
Joe's got a trap door that he'll know. Back when I was on the commission before, and this brings to mind Village Green, they had a piece of property on the southwest corner of Village Green that they showed in all their brochures as being a nice little park. It was actually zoned commercial. I'm going by memory. And they came in with the brochures and stuff, and we actually downzoned that back where they couldn't commercialize it, something of that nature. I remember that, and it was because it was misleading with the whole thing they were doing out there at the time. Is that accurate, or?
I think you're correct that they do have a cutout that they had anticipated being commercial and it's residential. I think another project did the same thing on the south side of State Road 60. But that is generally
Yeah, and
correct.
this happens all the time. It's not unique here. It's a developer. The developer gets with his marketer and his builders and stuff, and the marketer goes out and says, well, we can draw this picture in, it'll make it more appealing, and it's marketing, but it puts us in the middle because the people trust that we're here to protect their rights, and it's a problem.
Actually, we're dealing with several of the mobile home parks right now that have not rebuilt their clubhouses that were damaged during the hurricanes. Countryside is one. I think Holiday Village is another. Now, these are owned by private entities that are out of town, and we don't have the authority to make them do it. But we've been dealing with the residents just in them checking whether or not the owner has gotten building permits and things like that. But it is a similar situation where an amenity had been provided and the developer isn't fixing it in a timely manner after hurricane damage.
I think one of the things we could do is we could lobby the state to make the homeowners association, the rules for developers, and more accountable through the state level by changing the homeowners association law, that chapter 725, to make them more accountable, have better bonds. So that's what needs to be done, because that's where the people get hurt. I've met with Mr. April several times, and I'll try to set up a meeting with him again and with the developer. And I know that Commissioner Lowther's been involved in several of the meetings, and we could try. We will attempt to help. But I think that would be one of our best things, and we're all going up to the state legislature, see the state legislators today, and I think that would be a good idea, is to have that law stricter, have bonds required for developers, and have something tied to their licenses.
That's a
Mr.
thought.
Chairman.
Yes, Tom.
I still believe that, Bob, if this comes in as a PD, and I know it goes through it goes through planning and zoning, at some point in time we're going to know that if it's a gated community, because that always comes up, and I don't have a pet peeve with gated communities, but that seems, for the last 3.5 years of being on the county commission, that seems to be the biggest issue that's come to me with homeowners, is the security gate's not up, it's not in. And truthfully, the one issue that I did take care of was Kenwood Village happened to be a local developer, and he took care of it. Unfortunately, the other two were out of town, and they could care less. And they've left these gentlemen holding the bag. I think if it's, like Commissioner Wheeler, if it's at a level that it's at a P&Z, it's a PD, we know it's going to be a gated community, I think we can tag that to make sure that they have that security gate in somehow, and leave it at that. Not get into all the quagmire, Joe, but if they call it a gated community, it needs to be a gated community, and just keep it simple.
Can that work?
Yeah, we can do that during the conceptual PD approval, where you can put conditions on it, and we'll make a point to ask the developer if it's going to be a gated community, and we will inform the Planning and Zoning Commission and the board and put a recommended condition.
And keep it simple.
Mr. Paladin, you're an out-of-town developer. What do you suggest?
Joseph Paladin, Chairman of the Growth Awareness Committee, and I'm also a developer. I realize I have no authority here, but I'd just like to offer my 2 cents like I usually do. I think that basically what we're looking at here you know, you reward success, you penalize failure. It's like Gary said about a year or so ago when we had an issue come up with an item on a developer. He said, you know, we approve several of these, hundreds of these a year. We have problems with a couple. We want to be careful not to overreact and micromanage a single problem when there's several developments out there that go through the system without any of y'all ever hearing a complaint whatsoever. And I can, you know, verify and attest to that. But we need to have more power over maybe the development or the developers that come back and violate these issues time and time again. We don't want to pass a blanket change that we don't need, like Wesley said, because, you know, right now we have new laws, new provisions in there. We haven't had time to see react. We haven't seen a lot of our ordinances even show up yet. So to overreact before they have a chance to come in and show up, I think it causes more work for the county, more work for staff, and I think you all ought to have more control over individual circumstances instead of trying to change something across the board for everybody. You know, like this system here, these people have a gate. The gate's ridiculous. Makes no sense at all. So now if you make them put a gate in and you didn't do a good job putting the gate in and there's no berm or no wall or no security around the gate, what good is the gate? So this is a developer that doesn't care about the development, obviously, or maybe he's not aware of it. I don't know. I don't know who the developer is. But, I mean, you know, just making this guy put up the gate wouldn't help these people at all. It wouldn't help them. So you have to go beyond that and maybe have a lot more power with developers that aren't doing what they're supposed to do.
What do you suggest for these gentlemen?
I suggest we table this until we get a chance to look into this.
Not us. These gentlemen here that have a problem. What do you as a developer suggest they do with their developer?
Well, if the developer is in town here, and if he's doing other developments. He's not. He's not?
He's doing these.
Well, he's not in town, but he's here.
Who's the developer, can I ask?
Sun Street Partners.
Okay.
You know him, Joe?
No, I haven't sold anything to them. I don't know them very well. I just know I think they're from north of here, I believe, up in Melbourne, yeah.
Maybe you could go and make one offer they couldn't refuse.
Well, we could do that. No, I think that we could try and put some pressure on these people. Now, you know, under the new ordinance, like Wesley said, under a letter of credit for the last 25%, you know, if they didn't do something like make the gate safe for these people that live there, and they're holding a letter of credit, which is cash, basically, we don't have to reduce it or release it or do anything to it until we're satisfied that these people get their improvements done. I mean, we can do that as an individual situation instead of going ahead and trying to do a blanket thing, because we're still getting used to the ordinances out there, and Bob will tell you and Stan will tell you that, you know, a lot of new things are coming through the first and second time. We're not sure how to handle some of the stuff that's just coming through, so we're kind of getting used to that. So I don't think that we have to change the ordinance or change it, put another ordinance in to take care of that, because they're going to, if they don't want to do it, they're going to find a loophole around it anyway if they're not a reputable builder or developer, just like putting this gate in. It's probably the cheapest gate you can buy, and it's probably not going to achieve very much to grant these people security. So, you know, we got to make sure that we can do something so they don't do it again. Just like, remember, about 6 months ago, you had a developer that didn't do something, and then you got a development going on the next street, and you all approved it. We shouldn't do that.
Yes, Gary?
Yeah, you know, I'd like to see somehow, and I've thought about this the last couple of years, but there ought to be a way to have a, I don't know what you want to call it, a scorecard or something. All the developers we deal with, if there were some list, like, you know, a lot of these people rate doctors, they rate politicians, they rate, all, you know, some kind of a list that would show that, you know, here's 40 developers that we deal with, and these developers have a higher score of compliance and doing the proper thing, and these have a little less. So even when it comes in front of us, you wouldn't just be another development looks good on paper. It'd be something you might want to take a little harder look at and make sure the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted. And I know you guys do that, but you know, for us setting up here, it would be nice to know who we're dealing with on developments that come through. If there was some way to devise some type of a scorecard or evaluation sheet or whatever.
You got a guy right over here that should keep your scorecard for you. You got the press sitting over here.
Well, I think we would
Seen
have,
their score lately.
we
I'd
have,
be happy to put mine on against anybody else's, including yours.
I think that's a Better Business Bureau or a Chamber of Commerce issue. I don't think we need to. And there's a builders association or a developers association probably.
Absolutely.
They should do that.
But, in the homeowners association, you can only try and control so much. A lot of builders or developers, whoever's in charge of the homeowners association, try and get out of it as soon as they can. You still have to have a certain percentage turned over to the homeowners before you can do that. All my developments, I stay in the homeowners association until the very last house is inhabited by the end user and everybody's living there, so I have some control over what happens throughout. So it doesn't mean we don't have problems. It just means you don't hear about them because we take care of it. Even as a developer, when I sell lots to builders, if a builder has a problem, I take over the problem and I go see the customer and intervene for my builder to make sure we don't have complaints coming to the county. It's just a matter of being a reputable developer, a reputable businessman, living here and working here in town, and I don't think we have to put more guidelines on the guys that are doing that, time after time after time. I think we need to put some harshness on the people that are just not doing what they're supposed to do, because they're always going to find loopholes. Just like this gate thing is just a perfect example. If you just had in there they had to have a gate, they got a gate, but it's basically useless. So, we have to be able to, go a step further, but that's probably on a private sector thing or probably on an individual basis. I don't think we can pass an ordinance for that.
Wesley? Yes, Mr. Collins, is there anything with these three,
Thank you.
P, Q, and R that's before us today, anything that we can do that's associated with these to help the gentleman out in front of us?
No.
Okay. In that case, we're not, I'm not dismissing, but
Our hands are tied.
our hands are tied on this, and exactly what you're going through is exactly the reason why we've changed the ordinance. And the ordinance is substantially tighter as far as the amount of improvements that are in place. The bond no longer can just do a bond. It's cash. It's a letter of credit that the county is named payable to, and the reason you're standing before us today is the reason for all those changes that we made about 6 months ago. And with that said, I don't know what else we can do at this time. It does kind of go against my grain to approve more work for him whenever it doesn't seem like that we've had the opportunity to finish the work that he's already started.
Well, perhaps he'll get a message if the Press Journal reports this problem, and maybe he'll come around, but we can't promise anything.
Although we can't do anything right now, I think we can do things going forward to include non-required improvements in bonding requirements if they're part of the plans. Whether we require them or not, if they show certain things on the plans, we could hold up the certificate of completion until everything shown on the plans is in.
But like Mr. Paladin said, the gate is there. He said he put in the gate. He's put in the gate.
we required them to put gates in and look at the plans. Now, prior to this, we didn't have the gates on our official plans. I think there's 2 or 3 things we can do here. We need to lobby the state legislators and see if they can have a little more bite in that homeowners association law when the developer turns it over to the homeowners association, put some security. We could also require some bonding for gates and stuff like the gated part. And the third thing I think we can do is I'll get with these gentlemen. I'll try and get the developer to sit down with us, and I'll try again and do that, and hopefully we can get that. I think he's probably got the message.
I have what?
Go ahead, Lou.
The 4 villages across the street, which 3 of them are on your agenda, are also supposed to have security gates. There's no provisions for security gates up yet. At what point do you look into what they're doing?
Okay, why don't you set up a meeting with Mr. Baird and see what we can do? Yes, sir.
I just wanted to say there's also the problem with the retention pond.
Mm-hmm.
So, but that can be
Right, he said
held
he'll
them
look at
accountable for. And I appreciate the fact that you've heard our story. I appreciate the fact that your hands are tied. But I also was very taken with what Mr. Paladin said. How do you make a builder or developer be responsible? Is it only if they live in town and they've got papers looking at them? When people outside of our area come in here, you've got to put some teeth into the regulations so that they don't leave us out there with no recourse.
Right.
And you do that with their wallet.
If they're local, we know them generally, and they're usually more responsive. Not to say that out-of-towners are all not, but sometimes if they're away, we don't know them, don't know who they are, we can't look them in the eye.
Beyond that, excuse me again, we're state certified. You're licensed by the state of Florida. The worst thing that a state certified contractor or developer or builder wants is people calling the state about his license. So, you know, if he continuously doesn't do what you need done, you have that option. And that's a strong option. The state frowns on that. So you can call the state directly and even go beyond the county.
I think the main thing, Lou and Tony, is we've brought this forward, and
appreciate it very much.
and hopefully we'll continue to stay in touch and make sure that things like this.
Be in contact with Mr. Paladin. He's been very responsive to everything we've done. He's helped us on a lot of items, and he's helped other homeowners. Yes, any further comments on this?
I'll move approval on P, Q, and R.
I'll second that.
Is there any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0. All right. Excuse me while I turn a page.
Didn't mean to take that long, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, we're down to the added item on item 8, Victims of Crime Act grant. Is there someone here from the Sheriff's
Move
Department?
approval.
I'll second that.
Oh, come on.
Good morning, gentlemen. Kim Poole from the York County Sheriff's Office. I'm the planner. Y'all have a first and a second. Do you need me to clarify?
No.
No?
No.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Now I need to turn a page. Public items. Item 9A1, Board consideration to approve purchase of the Ryle parcel of the South Prong Slough site under the County Environmental Lands Program. And I think our public lands man is going to tell us about it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Roland Du Bois, Chief of Environmental Planning. This item has to do with the proposed purchase of a property under the county's Environmental Lands Bond Program. Subject property, we call it the Ryle parcel of our land acquisition project known as the South Prong Slough. It's located on County Road 510, or also 85th Street, between 66th Avenue and the Bend over by the current magnet school. It has the southern reaches of the Sebastian River running through it. This shows its location on the north side. Just for a bigger perspective, this is the project boundaries for what it's on the committee project list of what's called the South Prong Slough, which is a total of 129 acres. The subject Ryle property is just over 10 acres on the north side of 510. Just to give you a perspective, yet another perspective, here's a topo map, and you can clearly see the Sebastian River South Prong coming through the property and extending south through the overall South Prong Slough project. And then yet another perspective, this is a map that's been put together by a number of agencies, nonprofits that are proposing, and generally their support for this St. Sebastian River Greenway plan. And this is something that's been run by the Conservation Lands Advisory Committee, will be talked about and referred to at the upcoming Land Acquisition Committee meeting. But it gives a perspective that essentially we're looking at this as being part of the overall St. Sebastian River Greenway. We actually do have comprehensive plan policies in our comprehensive plan right now that does consider the Sebastian River to be kind of a greenway, blueway type corridor. So this is an important one of a number of parcels in the project. I'm going to point to the Ryle parcel, essentially right at this location.
Roland, you can, would you point to the area of the St. Sebastian River Buffer Preserve and what land we do have up there?
Yes, this is right here, is about a quarter of the St. Sebastian River Buffer Preserve. It's about, of the total 23,000 acres, which is essentially the whole west side of Sebastian River north of 512. We have the Anson piece that we just bought at the corner of 510 and 512. There's a project here where the Marine Resource Council has gotten funding through the state to acquire certain parcels within this development to preserve some land. The Rao parcels here. South of it is the South Prong Slough site. There's a parcel within that project, the county's project, where we're working with the Indian River Land Trust, what's called the Shadowbrook Estates parcel, to try to come up with a partnership acquisition. And what's going before the committee, acquisition committee shortly, is essentially to finalize the connections in this project and look at the overall parcels to make it a complete project. So it all ties in. We even have up here another site called the Russell Grove, which is again next to the Boy Scout camp. So there's a lot of interrelated, intertwined pieces that are falling together, and this is one of those pieces.
And I might add that we had a field trip. This is one of my committees, and we had a field trip out there not too long ago, and it's a beautiful area, beautiful piece of property. I'm sure Wesley's familiar with that area. Yep. And there's a kayak and canoe launching ramp up north of 510, and it's just a great piece of property, and I'm happy to recommend that we buy it.
Just focusing in on the subject property, again, it's just over 10 acres. It's right next to the Sebastian River Water Control District, right away to the west. The river's running through it. You have some old grove properties. This was actually part of a bigger property that you see to the east that was sold off, and it's now part of a development that's within the city limits. Now, the property does have some significant natural features. That's just a view of the slough. There are some areas that have been areas that are what's called ruderal or been cleared in the past that do have some disturbance from natural area. That part of the process here on management would be to try to reclaim those areas back to a natural state. One part of this project I want to point out is that there is a house on the property, and when we first were looking at acquiring it, we talked to Ms. Ryle on two concepts. One was to cut out the house and about an acre around it to kind of leave that out of the purchase and just buy the remainder, or to buy the whole thing. In the end, it's a willing seller program. Ms. Ryle wanted to sell the whole property, and that's what we're looking at here. Conceptually, what's thought of is this house could be served as a caretaker quarters for the entire project once we expect to have some broader acquisitions. So there's opportunities to use the property. When this went before the Land Acquisition Committee, which incidentally did support this purchase 14-0, there were some discussions, however, about one aspect of this agreement is that Ms. Ryle would be allowed to stay at the property after closing for up to 1 year as kind of in order for her to get her affairs in order under a minimal lease arrangement. There's some questions about liability. We checked with the risk manager, general services, and attorneys, and the general conclusion is that the county's overall umbrella type insurance will pretty much cover the matter from the county's perspective. There's also a provision in the lease that Ms. Ryle is responsible for her own insurance for her own content. So we feel that everything's covered from that perspective. Just to get into some of the details, this is an environmental land purchase. One thing I want to point out too is that kind of a parallel project right now is there is a right-of-way improvement project being planned for widening 512.
10.
Well, excuse me, 510. And I've spoken with the Public Works Director, and similar to what we did under the Anson purchase up the street, that portion of the property that will be ultimately used for the right-of-way, we'll coordinate that at closing so that road improvement funds are used for that portion of the purchase. So we're accounting for that as well. The negotiated purchase price for this property, the purchase price is $1.15 million or $1,150,000. We haven't applied for, but we anticipate that this would be a good Florida Communities Trust project for after purchase reimbursement grant of 50%. So we anticipate that would be forthcoming. Part of the recommendation on this purchase would be a direction to staff to proceed with an application for cost share funding through the Land Communities Trust. We did get 2 appraisals in evaluating this property. The actual purchase price, when we get, again, under the county and state procedures, when a property is over $500,000, you get 2 appraisals. If the appraisals need to be within 20% of each other to be consistent. This particular project, the negotiated purchase price is about 81% of the appraised value, which would be the higher of those 2 appraisals. So from a staff perspective, using the appraisals as a reference, we feel that's a reasonable negotiated purchase below the appraised value. That's essentially the summary. We're supporting Black's recommendation that we proceed with purchase, and we're recommending that the board approve exercise of the option to direct staff to close and to apply for after-the-fact cost share fund through Florida Communities Trust. If you have any questions,
Any
please let me know.
questions, Roland?
Roland, is there any real estate commissions being paid on this transaction?
No, not on our end. We used our acquisition consultant. In this case, it was done under the older contract that we had with Florida Affinity, who essentially just works for the county on an hourly basis. And I do want to point out that whenever you get Florida Communities Trust funding, which we expect to get, they also cost share that fee as well. So again, we think it's a reasonable purchase. Of course, we're hanging our hat on the cost share funding, but we're pretty confident that we would get it.
One other quick question. We're looking at the piece to the south, I assume that was the Shadowbrook Farms? Or, okay. And with 510 going right between these 2 parcels and it creating a blueway or greenway, as we're developing the 510 project, are we going to have some kind of maybe a pedestrian or even a wildlife corridor as it goes under the bridge in that area?
I did meet just earlier this week with Terry Roth, who's head of our capital projects, and there's also, I believe, the Indian River Land Trust has had a dialogue with our staff. So yes, there is. It's on everybody's radar that there needs to be some consideration of at least a pedestrian crossing. I think there's just some engineering and physical constraints as far as an under road crossing, just because of the nature of the water table, etc. But clearly, I think we're working with the road project staff to try to accommodate, a pedestrian crossing.
Well, and for wildlife, I think if there's a way, I don't know whether we're planning to put a culvert there or a bridge, but it seemed like to me some kind of a pylon structure would be more beneficial for wildlife versus having them go through a culvert that they may not use on a natural basis.
Yeah, and I can't really speak to the design issues, just to let you know that they're aware of the situation.
All right. Mr. Davis, did you have a comment about the design engineering?
Jim Davis, Public Works Director. We have met with David Cox and some other people regarding that issue, and we really do not have plans for a raised bridge. Those are very expensive, $1 million for a bridge. But we are looking at either box culvert or some type of a crossing in that area.
There's a little bridge just to the east of this area. What's going to happen there?
Well, some of those bridges, the existing bridges, are in the Sebastian River Water Control District canal system. We're going to be replacing those bridges with a 4-lane divided type highway bridge.
A real bridge, not a culvert, but a bridge.
Well, there will be some culverts in some areas and bridges in the main lateral canals.
All right. Any further questions? All right. We need to open a public hearing. Anyone in the audience like to speak? Dr. Cox?
Commissioners, David Cox, Periwinkle Drive. Thanks, Roland, for the good overview. Staff has worked very hard on this purchase and has been really helpful and open in our overall move towards trying to put together a greenway for the river. A lot of oars in in the water on this. Many nonprofits that have been working towards this vision and support this particular purchase. Friends of the St. Sebastian River, Pelican Island Audubon Society, Marine Resources Council, Indian River County Historical Society, Sebastian River Area Chamber of Commerce, Indian River County Chamber of Commerce, and Indian River Land Trust, Ken Grudens, who's here, have all been supportive and are working towards this goal. This dream of maybe being able to walk along the river from the headwaters all the way to the lagoon. I'd like to emphasize that these purchases are not just for natural resource protection, not just for amenities that are recreational or even for economic development and tourism, but the protection that they provide, this critical link in our watershed. I don't know how many times we're going to end up having to dredge the St. Sebastian River over the next 100 years, and at some enormous expense to the taxpayers. There's a real connection between providing a buffer close to the river and reducing the amount of sediment, nitrogen, phosphorus, and other pollutants that enter the lagoon. And so I think that purchases like this offer us a real win-win to accomplish a number of the goals and objectives that are in our comp plan, and in this case, I think at a pretty good price. We have met with Mr. Davis and Ms. Routh of Public Works, and they've been open. I would like to hope that the door could be kept ajar on the issue of whether or not we might have a piling-based crossing there and a bridge. I understand that it's expensive, but we're only going to widen 510 once, and we're right here now at a point where we're putting together a greenway that is going to, with good luck and intention here, be here for generations. And the ability to have a crossing that's not at grade, not putting people at risk of crossing a 4-lane road, as well as the wildlife, of course, the ability to have a crossing that is close to the water is something that we at least need to cost out and take a good close look at, I would suggest. And I certainly appreciate your time, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to take a stab at them, but I do hope that you can find a way to support this.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank
Cox.
you.
Any questions? Gary?
General question, I guess. I saw in the paper the other day where like 25 diseases have been transferred over now from animals to humans, like the bird flu and so on and so forth, and swine flu in the past. And I've also seen around the country, I think out in Colorado or someplace, where they spent millions of dollars to put a crossing in for animals. And I know, being from the Northeast originally, came down here in 1970, but I haven't hunted in Florida. But I know when you go up north, deer, geese, bear, all kinds of wild animals are really in such number now that they're becoming a nuisance. And I'm just wondering if and I don't have the answer, I'm just curious, but maybe I wonder if there's a possibility we're focusing a lot more on wildlife. I don't know how to control it other than hunters or so on and so forth, but
well, I think you also have to remember that the amount of our landscape that is available to wildlife is diminishing as we are occupying more and more of it. And so even if we had the same numbers of each of the species, they're being concentrated into a smaller and smaller area, which
but do we have
brings
the
them
same
into
numbers, or
contact
do we
with us.
Do we have larger numbers?
In some cases, we do have larger numbers of a small number of opportunistic species that do a pretty good job of handling being around us, and then we have far reduced numbers of species that are more sensitive that don't get along so well with being in close proximity to us. So we end up with these huge populations of deer in the Midwest and the Northeast, and increasing populations of black bear, and I don't know if you watched what was it, Nature the other night. They had a show on animals that the worst animals. I think the animals that gone bad. I think that.
Yeah, I saw that.
And,
But I see. You know, when I was a kid, see a flock of geese go over was a big deal. You go up north now in the summertime, and I mean, there's literally thousands and thousands of geese every place you go where there's water or parking lot or grass. You find flocks of geese. And but anyway, I'm just curious.
I think what the conservation efforts have certainly helped. I mean, the wild turkey population, the geese, I mean, we've really changed our attitude on how we deal with things like that, and a lot of it has to do, just quite frankly, with some of the purchases that we're making right now.
I think that the issue of animals as a harbor for diseases that can transfer to humans is a very real concern, and we see it in the lagoon. We're seeing all of these lesioned. I'm less concerned about the fish than I am about lesioned mammals that are out there, dolphins, and also the turtles. And we don't know exactly what the root cause of this is, whether it's red tide induced or whether it's naturally occurring viruses that are present in literally tens of millions per milliliter in coastal waters. Generally, they don't cause us any problem at all, but it only takes one or two mutations. And in any event, that's a natural reservoir of potential disease problems that's out there. And I can't help but wonder what the effect of our land use decisions and increased pollutant loadings thrown into that mix may be brewing in the waters out there. But I think that you're right, Commissioner Wheeler, that we can expect to see reflections of our. I think these are reflections of the way that we are shaping our environment, and the neighbors who are non-humans. Our entire neighborhood is being affected by our actions, and it's going to come back to us. Anyway, I think that in this case we have a happier prospect at hand, and that is creating a greenway that I think can be for the benefit of all of the residents of Indian River County now and into the future. And so I do hope that you'll see it that way too.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Cox. Is there anyone else from the audience who would like to be heard on this $1 million purchase? Then I'll close the public hearing. What's your pleasure?
I'll second that, Mr. Chairman.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 9A2, Ann G. Keene Trust's request to rezone 37.16 acres from A1 to RS3. Mr. Keating.
Good morning. I'm Bob Keating. I'm County Community Development Director. This is pretty simple rezoning. It's a proposal to change the zoning on a piece of property from A1, which is agriculture, and allows a residential density of up to 1 unit per 5 acres, to RS3, which is residential single family up to 3 units per acre. This is an area where you have rezoned several properties in the last few months. The aerial shows the subject property. It's on the east side of Kings Highway, and it's just south of 4th Street. It's generally the remnants of a 40-acre parcel. The tract itself is just over 37 acres in size. The purpose of this rezoning is to change the zoning on the property so the property can be developed consistent with the land use designation of the property, and the property is designated L1, low density 1, on the land use map, and that allows up to 3 units per acre. At its January 26 meeting, the Planning and Zoning Commission did unanimously recommend that you approve this rezoning. If you look at the graphic, you can see what the existing land uses are in the general area. To the east of the property is a Stonebridge subdivision. To the northeast is Cypress Lake subdivision. To the south of First Street Southwest is the Hammock Lake subdivision. This is a little unusual area in the sense that on the west side of Kings Highway, part of the area is outside the urban service area and part is inside. You can see the rectangle there that shows as RS1, that is inside the urban service area, and the properties to the west, north, and south of that are outside of the urban service area. Then north of 4th Street, west of Kings Highway, the area is inside the urban service area again. The property to the north of the subject property is agricultural property, and there is a single-family house on it. As you can see, this area of the county is generally characterized by low-density single-family subdivisions. The same type of use would be put on the subject property if the rezoning is approved. With this rezoning, we looked at the criteria we look at with all rezonings. We looked at concurrency, comp plan consistency, environmental impact, and compatibility. From a concurrency standpoint, there is sufficient capacity in all the concurrency facilities to accommodate development on the subject property, so the concurrency test is met. This proposed rezoning is consistent with the comp plan. As I indicated, the zoning allows a density of up to 3 units per acre, which is the same as the land use designation. So from a land use perspective, the rezoning is consistent with the land use designation. We did look at this rezoning with respect to the other policies and objectives in the comp plan, and this rezoning is consistent with that. This is an altered site, so it's not a significant wetlands or an endangered upland, so there won't be any significant environmental impact to the subject property. Staff feels that this is compatible with the surrounding area. As I said, Stonebridge is to the east, Hammock Lakes is a little bit to the south. The properties in this general area that aren't already developed residentially, some of them are actually in for development approval right now. The east side of Kings Highway is generally an L1 area, and it is developing out as a low-density, single-family, under 3 unit per acre area, and that's compatible with the type of development that could go on the subject property with the rezoning. So in conclusion, staff feels that the proposed rezoning is compatible with the surrounding area. It's consistent with the comp plan. It meets the concurrency test, won't have any significant environmental impacts, and staff and the Planning and Zoning Commission recommend that you approve the rezoning.
Any questions of staff?
Yes. I need some clarity on our transportation. And we talked the other day on the Senate Bill 360 and proportionate share and so on and so forth. But we rezone properties and we look at transportation and we say, yep, it's there, they meet concurrency. And then they come in for development at whatever density is allowed, and we're having a problem with transportation concurrency. And and we were doing this before, although we've done a lot of rezonings, and at the time I think we were kind of looking at what this piece of property did without weighing what's already been approved in the past. And at some point in time, when it's time to pay the piper, and we got to have the density, so because they've got rights to their property because it's been rezoned, and we don't have the density. I mean, are we going to run out of density here like we have on capacity? Thank you. Capacity, but because of increased density, because of increased rezoning of agricultural property and so on and so forth. And where do we really get a fine or a clear view of where we are as far as concurrency and as far as capacity on our roads for what we're rezoning and allowing and approving development?
Let me answer, I think, your last question first. And I don't think we are going to run out of capacity in this area anytime soon. We've got a 4-lane divided facility, Kings Highway, with a bunch of available capacity on it for north-south trips in that area. And
would you define anytime soon? Is that a year, 10 years, 25 years?
Yeah, I don't see in this area in the next 15 or 20 years.
Okay.
And one of the reasons that I can say that is looking at the results of the MPO Long Range Transportation Plan. We did, in conjunction with that, travel demand forecasting and looking at how many trips are going to go where in the year 2030 based on projections of development through that time. But not only do we have Kings Highway, which, like I said, is a pretty significant north-south facility with a lot of capacity, most of the property on the west side of Kings Highway is outside of the urban service area, so it's not going to be generating trips. The county is in the process of building 66 Avenue. That should be built relatively soon, which will provide another north-south facility. Plus, we have the east-west grid system down there, which is a good, pretty densified grid system that provides capacity. In answer to your general question, how we do concurrency, it is kind of complicated, but at the stage where the county is not granting specific rights to build something or to develop property like this at the rezoning, we do what's called a conditional concurrency test. We do a 1 point in time test. For this rezoning, we looked, and the capacity is there today, but the applicant doesn't need to vest. We're not looking at vesting, so we're not counting those trips in our database. As a project moves further through the process and it comes closer to actually allowing physical development that produces trips, that's when it's more appropriate to vest the trips and count them in the system. And a lot of these things are being looked at by the traffic consultant that's on board right now, and hopefully he's going to have all the answers.
Good. Another definition, though, for relatively soon. I mean, you're looking at 66th Avenue. I know we're purchasing right away and stuff, but what, I mean, we're looking 1 year, 3 years, 5 years.
I was looking for Jim Davis, but I think it's within 1 year.
Start construction.
Yes, from State Road 60 to Oslo.
Thank you.
Any further questions to staff?
2006 and 2007.
Before I open the public hearing? Okay, I'm going to open the public hearing. Anyone in the audience wish to be heard on this item? Public hearing is closed. What's your pleasure, gentlemen?
I'll move to approve, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Under 9B, let's see, should we take a break before then?
Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have to take a break every 90 minutes, and it's getting close, so let me have about a 5-minute break, and we'll be right back. I'd like to call the meeting back to order, please.
Sure, Commissioner Davis.
We're up to item 9B, public discussion items. We have a request to speak from Keep Indian River Beautiful, Inc. regarding the Great American Cleanup. Sherry Hamlin, Executive Director. Another one of my committees.
Good morning. Thank you. I am Sherry Hamlin with Keep Indian River Beautiful. Keep Indian River Beautiful encourages the residents of our county to get active and get involved in Keep America Beautiful's 2006 Great American Cleanup. This local effort is part of the nation's largest annual community improvement program. Keep Indian River Beautiful, or better known as KIRB, K-I-R-B, will be completing projects with local groups throughout this 3-month-long period from March 1st through May 31st. Volunteers from our community will be rallying with nearly 3 million people, volunteering more than 8 million hours to clean, beautify, and improve 15,000 communities in 30,000 events in all 50 states from coast to coast. Last year, 2.4 million Great American Cleanup volunteers collected a record-breaking 208 million pounds of litter and debris. They cleaned 176,000 miles of streets and roads and highways, and 10,250 miles of rivers, lakes, and shorelines. Since 1985, the national nonprofit Keep America Beautiful has been leading this program through its affiliate network and other participating organizations. There's over 40 affiliates in the state of Florida alone, and Keep Indian River Beautiful, of course, is one of those. Every spring, volunteers are mobilized to tackle eyesores throughout their community and to build a sense of pride and ownership. Locally, in 2004, Indian River County had nearly 1,800 volunteers taking part in this effort, and they cleaned up nearly 27,000 pounds of litter and debris throughout our community. However, the hurricanes were right after that, so last year's participation in the Great American Cleanup did not reach near that level. Everyone was overwhelmed with cleaning up their own hurricane debris and helping out others in the community. But that's in the past now, so once again, we are asking for groups to select a project that will either clean up, green up, fix up, or sustain or beautify a part of their community. Then contact Keep Indian River Beautiful and ask how you can be a part of the Great American Cleanup. Then each year we also hold a contest that's called the Great American Cleanup Challenge Contest. This is sponsored by Treasure Coast Refuge and Waste Management, and it provides an incentive to schools, church youth groups, and other organizations to coordinate activities to keep Indian River beautiful. There will be cash prizes awarded in 4 different categories: the most litter collected, the best beautification project, the best recycling project, and the best overall. To participate, all you have to do is fill out a form, a registration form, which we'll provide. Then the completed projects have to be done between March 1st and May 1st. They'll have to be turned in by May 5th, and then they'll be judged the following week, and the winners will be announced on May 12th. You do not, however, have to participate in the challenge contest in order to participate in the Great American Cleanup. I'd like to add also, although I do not want to entertain the thought of future hurricanes, the predictions don't look too promising for decades in the future. We know from past experiences that anything that's laying around when these storms hit are potential projectiles flying around the community. So let that be an added incentive to be picking up litter between now and hurricane season, and any debris still laying around from the past storms, and get those things out of the way, get them to the landfill. Any trimming of trees, any dead trees, and trimming of limbs and everything that needs to be done, go ahead and be doing that during this Great American Cleanup period. Get those out of the way so that those also will not affect anything when if storms should hit. And we encourage everyone to contact Keep Indian River Beautiful at 388-KIRB, K-I-R-B, or email us at keepir, that stands for Indian River, keepir beautiful at AOL.com, or visit our website at www.curb.org. And I'd like to challenge this panel of community leaders to volunteer to participate in some capacity in our Great American Cleanup. I'm working on a challenge at this time. A new thing just happened to be thrown into the pot this morning, so I will be presenting a challenge to you and some other community leaders coming up very shortly. Thank you for this opportunity.
Sherry, I wonder if you'd tell us a little bit about where your office is and how you got it, and or our office is, and how you get your funding.
Okay. Our office was located in Vero for about 5 years, and right where they're building the new county administration complex. Of course, they leveled that, so we had to leave. We did find new quarters. We've been there since mid-May up in Sebastian on Main Street. It's the old building department of the City Hall complex up there. Very nice building. And our funding, we do get funding through the county, of course, through solid waste disposal districts budgeting. We also get a grant from the state. Our largest funding, though, is from the county. And through membership, through sponsorships of organizations throughout the community, and various things like that. So we encourage membership we have a variety of programs, everything to promote litter cleanups, beautification. We educate in the schools about litter prevention and reduction and about the 4 R's. We also have a reuse exchange in our facility, which encourages residents to save things that would otherwise end up in the landfill, because we're trying to save the valuable landfill space. And they bring these items in. It could be anything from craft supplies that they no longer need. It could be anything from coffee cans, oatmeal things, plastics and that. Things that they cannot recycle curbside, and they bring them in, and we have volunteers go through them. We have a little store in there, and it's open to the public. Of course, our target is for school teachers and scout leaders, daycare leaders and that, to come in, and they can shop for free for any of these supplies that they can utilize in projects and science projects, art projects, anything, and it is free.
Thank you. And you do all this with a staff of 1.5, is that correct?
Well, actually, I've expanded a little. It's myself. I now have a part-time administrative assistant, Kathy, that I hired in mid-December, and then I have a part-time 4 R's coordinator, Nancy, that helps out also. But we're expanding, and the potential is fantastic. We have, throughout the Great American Cleanup, I mean, we're not just encouraging people to do these projects, but we're a part of a lot of different, what we call litter-free events. Everything from the Sheriff's Youth Ranch Barbecue, Pelican Island Wildlife Festival, March of Dimes Family Fun Day, which will be in April, the Relay for Life at Sebastian River High School. I don't know, there's quite a few. Goby Fest, Arbor Day with Sebastian City, and we have new, which I also would like to mention, we have new receptacles that are metal frames with bags in that. One is for trash, one is for recyclables only. You'll be seeing those at as many events as we can get them out in from here on out, and they will have a sign on that says Keep Indian River Beautiful. And we are providing those to the different events, trying to get people to, for one thing, not get litter on the ground or anything, have these be virtual litter-free events, but also so that they will not throw everything into the trash receptacles, but they will have the opportunity to put them in the recycling, so we can keep the recyclables separated from the trash.
Very good. Any questions of Ms. Hamlin?
Just real quick, I had the opportunity to see your recycling with the arts and everything while I was on the school board, and it is very well received and very well used. Also, at these garbage recycling, or that, I guess, where you're going to have the opportunity to put some recyclable materials in instead of just inside of a garbage can. Are you going to be able to do that at the fair this year by chance? Is that?
I've already worked that out with Toby Turner. Yes,
Good.
The recyclables will be there.
Because he had asked me to mention that, and I mentioned that, I believe, to Eric, and then.
That's why I did want to mention. Toby did mention that he had, conferred with you earlier about the, wanting to have that. But yes, we've got that worked out. He will have them at the firefighters fair.
Super.
The Antique Auto Club is having a function under the Oaks shortly. You might want to get in touch with them.
Okay.
I'll let you know. I think they have a meeting coming up
We did that function last year, but not as a litter-free event, so
Okay.
we had an exhibit there.
All right. Any further questions, Ms. Hamlin? Thank you very much for coming. It's very informative, and Keeping It Beautiful is doing a great job.
Thank you. Thank you, Art.
Okay, the next item, B2, was deleted. B3, request to speak from Unconditional Caring regarding Community Caring Initiative.
Hello. My name is Unconditional Caring. My address is 522 North Blue Island Lane. I say hello to Commissioner Wesley Davis, who is my closest neighbor, and hello to Chair Arthur Newberger and Vice Chair Gary Wheeler and Sandra Bowden, who might be watching. She's a leader in what is dear to my heart, which is sustainable community of caring. And Thomas Lowther, I appreciate your webpage, which expressed how great our natural resources are and the relaxed pace of life in Indian River County. And hello all watching me and everyone who invited me to speak today. I want to draw public attention to my community caring initiative and invite you to join me. This community caring initiative is based on extensive research on what the most successful communities in the United States are doing to be successful. Most important, I invite you all watching and living in Indian River County to join America's Promise at www.americaspromise.org. America's Promise is a community caring initiative organized by George Bush, previous Elder George Bush, and Bill Clinton, and founded by Colin Powell, involving a step-by-step, easy-to-understand community partnership strategy based on the most current research on successful communities. Specifically targeted to youth, yet easily adaptable to meet the caring needs of all individuals, including the elderly, each community gets a website linked to the main website that acts as a virtual community center to coordinate the efforts of all the people and different organizations in the community. Each person in the community can immediately access the different community initiatives going on in communities locally and nationally. They have a great ideas database of tried and true community caring ideas. They also list the latest research about how to create community caring. Most recently was an article about how the New York Stock Exchange is the most recent organization to support America's Promise and to create a community partnership with it because of recent research that shows that financial success depends on community caring. The easy-to-understand step-by-step strategy these top researchers put together is step 1, mapping the resources of the community, which I've started to do with the help of the Community Development Report published by Indian River County and have posted at www.geocities.com/unconditionalcaring/indianrivermap.htm. Step 2, once you get a general idea of the resources, you can see what the most urgent needs of the community are. America's Promise provides a caring survey we could do. I heard from Faith Fraser at United Way that Indian River County hired a consulting group to do a needs assessment of the community, who might be able to conduct the caring survey, which top researchers have found effective to identify the caring needs of the community. Step 3, then they provide cool forms to help you brainstorm innovative ways to connect people with their needs to the resources that all of us can do from the comfort of our internet screen and can do together virtually and directly based on what we feel is most important for the community to do. By following this strategy myself, I was able to see who in the community has the most resources and who in the community most urgently needs resources. Then I brainstormed and came up with my community caring initiative called the Communication Campaign to Care, which you can see at www.care2.com/c2c/get-together/1932. I invite you watching and living in Indian River County to join the Communication Campaign to Care, which involves writing positive, funny, challenging email messages, offering caring ideas to groups in the community who have the most resources and groups that most urgently need resources to help connect people to resources based on their values, beliefs, and interests. So here are some caring ideas I offer you. By mapping the resources and talking to people, I was able to find out that there are so many organizations carefully organized by the new 211 crisis line and information referral number, yet not specifically mapped in terms of available resources. That it's not possible to make a public assessment until I finish talking to each organization to find out who is most helping those who urgently need resources and what resources they have to offer. With a map of the resources and caring needs available to all people in the community on the internet, with America's Promise website and links, we can all immediately see what resources people most urgently need and what programs are currently trying to meet those needs. We can then brainstorm innovative ways to help these programs to be effective through email, virtual, and direct roundtable brainstorming discussions with the comfort of our computer screen. To help create a map of the resources, I invite Indian River County to create a fact sheet of its free services and its resources, posted in a prominent place for people in need to see what is available in a respectful, caring, and comfortable way so that people can get their needs met and invite other organizations to join you. You could have a Community Needs Awareness Day with community needs awareness programs, with businesses and people giving freebies, and roundtable discussions on how to meet the community needs. I invite you watching and living in Indian River County to help people currently not on the internet and not able to physically attend community meetings such as this, to be able to get on the internet and avail themselves of the resources by creating a neighborhood watch program coordinated with the Neighborhood Association of Neighbors Helping Neighbors to meet their needs and helping them to know about and access the available resources. I've been going out on Sundays and talking to people I meet in the street about my community caring initiative, and yet I probably miss people cringing in their houses and not knowing or afraid to get help, and those living outside the neighborhood in which I live. So we can invite people in the community to participate in a neighborhood watch program of neighbors watching out for neighbors and helping them meet their needs. One community caring idea developed by the Stand Up for Kids national organization is the Turning Purple campaign at www.turningpurple.org. I invite you watching and living in Indian River County to join the Turning Purple campaign that invites the nation to turn purple in April and bring public attention to abuse and neglect needs of the community and to the resources available to meet those needs. This can be an effective learning opportunity to provide the public with researched and valuable information on how to prevent abuse and neglect, how to handle crisis, and gives a hotline number that people can call and turn to if they need help that people immediately around them cannot provide. This is an effective model to deal with all caring needs and issues of abuse and neglect, whether it involves animals and plants, elderly, children, or adults. We can choose a target group to focus on, create a fact sheet on the resources available for that group about how to prevent and deal with crisis of abuse and neglect, and then create community events to educate this group and the public about how to prevent and handle abuse and neglect effectively. Also, another great database of community caring ideas can be found at the Communities of Caring website, www.communityofcaring.org, that offers research-based caring ideas to help encourage us to learn and practice community caring with schools, with emphasis on the values of caring, respect, trust, responsibility, and family into every aspect of school and community life, with learning forums and community service engaged in problem solving and meeting needs on the basis of these values. Communities have been effectively able to significantly, and very significantly, like from 20% to 70%, foster character and citizen development, improve school attendance and academic performance, improve school climate and create a caring school community, foster greater acceptance of diversity, including those with intellectual disabilities, create safer school environments by preventing bullying and other forms of violence, prevent teen pregnancy with a youth development focus, and reduce tobacco, drug, and alcohol use. So there you have it. I present to you this community caring initiative to bring public attention and invite public discussion about community caring ideas to meet people's needs in this community. You can email me at unconditionalcaring@yahoo.com, and I have set up a free discussion site with these ideas posted at www.care2.com/c2c/group/unconditionalcaring.
Well, thank you. That was a fairly comprehensive episode. Perhaps you want to leave your notes with our secretary so we could distribute them to whoever might be able to initiate some of the programs.
And
any questions of this young lady?
There you go.
You gave out a lot. You gave out a lot of information. And what unconditional? What's your? If we were to contact you, for those that might have been watching in their, it's unconditional caring
at yahoo.com.
Just wanted to say that one more time for those in TV land.
It's one whole phrase without any space.
Right. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you. Item number B4, request to speak from Harry Wrighton regarding First Baptist Church Festival of Joy. Harry, good to see you.
Good morning. Yeah, it's a pleasure for me to be here, and and I appreciate this time. I come to you to tell you about what a great event that is getting ready to happen at the First Baptist Church in Vero Beach. It's called the Festival of Joy. It's like an old-time Billy Graham-style revival. And what I want to do first is just let you know why we need revival. Let's think back 200 years. Our nation was founded as a nation under God. We put God in our currency, and God we trust, we place on our money. God was a centerpiece of our founding documents. But things have changed. Sadly, our nation, that was founded as a nation under God, has taken God out of our schools. We've taken God out of our courthouses. And worst of all, we've taken God out of our lives. So we need to turn back as a nation. But what has happened since we have been turning away from God? Just need to look at the newspaper, turn on the radio, watch TV. We've seen increases in pornography, increases in illegal drugs, even among our children. Child abuse has increased, and and reading the newspaper about sex offenders, this is getting more and more common. It's a lack of family values. Divorces are more common than a stable marriage, and the murder of unborn children, unborn babies, is commonplace and is legalized. And we have pretty much become immune to these kind of things. It's acceptable in our society. But this is not what I think that we know in our hearts. This is not right. In our country, our people, as we take God out of our lives, we see bad things happening. But the Festival of Joy, and it's going to be a fun time. It's going to be held at First Baptist Church. It begins not this Sunday, but the following Sunday, and that's March 5th through the 8th. And there's going to be special events every night. The first night, Monday, March the 6th, Whitley Phipps is going to be singing and sharing with us, and we know what a great person that he is. Our speaker is Dr. Jim Wilson, and he's been recommended to us by Billy Graham. And the message that he speaks, and he speaks from the Bible, is spoken with clarity, simplicity, and with dignity. And his message is positive, and it's relevant to today. I talked to Jim yesterday, and I said, Jim, tell me, have you thought about anything specifically you're going to talk about? And he said, Harry, I want to talk a little bit about current events. And he said, it's just like taking the newspaper. What do we read? What's happening in the newspaper? Okay, think about the hurricanes, Katrina, Jean, the hurricanes the last 2 years. What's going to come on? What's next going to happen? We're all concerned about hurricanes. And did God allow this happen? Did He make it happen? What He's going to do is He's going to take these current events that we read in the press journal, we read in the media, and He's going to say what the Bible tells about it. Not what man says, what man expects, what God says. And you mentioned the bird flu, 9/11, the terrorists, earthquakes. We've seen a lot of things happen, and we wonder in the back of our minds, what does God say about this? And Dr. Jim Wilson, he'll be able to let you know and speak in a very clear way. And he's going to be talking about this on March 7th at 7 p.m. And as leaders of our community, I thank you for being here. And I think it's important, too, that and he's going to speak about the assurance of salvation. And I think it's important that if you don't know what will happen to you if you die today, what's going to happen? Are you going to heaven? Is there a hell? This is a time to find out, and you'll be able to find out from a man that's going to speak it the way it is, not the way he thinks. It's what comes from the Bible. So I hope that as leaders that you will encourage your family, friends to be there. And Jim Wilson told me yesterday. He said, Harry, I know your Christian friends are going to be there, but what we want, the people that we want to come to this Festival of Joy are the doubters, the skeptics, and the unbelievers. So this is open to everybody. And again, I think that this is probably one of the most important events that is going to take place in Indian River County, and I encourage everybody to be there. And it's free, and the dress is casual. And if you would like more information, the church office, 567-4341, can give you more information. And that's about all I have to say if anyone has a question.
Any questions of Mr. Wright?
What were the dates?
Okay, March 5th through the 8th. March 5th, it's not this Sunday, but the following Sunday. There'll be a service at 8, 10:30, and then there'll be a family services on 6 p.m. And he's going to talk a lot about family values, on marriage, how to divorce-proof your marriage. Young couples, they're struggling today, and our children as they grow up. And we need to offer them what God has put in, has given to us. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Harry Wright. Good message. Kim, would you read the public notice items, please?
Sure.
This is items scheduled to come up in the future.
Notice of scheduled public hearing for March 7, 2006. Central Assembly of God, Inc. rezoning. Request to rezone plus or minus 10.42 acres north of 16th Street and approximately 930 feet west of 66th Avenue from A1, Agricultural 1 District, up to 1 unit per 5 acres, to RM6, Multifamily Residential District, up to 6 units per acre. Central Assembly of God owner, Schulke, Biddle, and Stoddard, LLC agent. This matter is quasi-judicial. 9C2, notice of public hearing for March 7, 2006. An ordinance of the Board of County Commissioners of Indian River County, Florida, amending Indian River County Code, Chapter 955, moving of structures to add a bonding requirement, providing for an effective date, severability, and codification. This matter is legislative.
Okay, item 10A, County Administrator's Matters. There are none. Departmental matters. There are none for community development, none emergency.
No, there's...
Where did I go?
Item 10, County Administrator's
I'm
matter.
sorry, I skipped right over it. County Administrator.
Yes, I'm recommending that we add additional staff to the Public Works Department, to face the challenges of the growth and fast-tracking projects. I'm recommending that we add 6 new positions, including an Assistant Public Works Director, and at a cost of about $370,000 this year. We feel the majority of this will be paid from impact fees.
This year, we're not quite halfway through the fiscal year, so I guess it's going to be about a total package of about $1 million. Then if we have a full...
It would be probably their startup costs affiliated with this, furniture, computers, automobiles, so we estimate about $600,000 annually.
Okay.
What's your pleasure, gentlemen?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I move to approve. I'm not one typically in favor of adding staff and increasing the size of bureaucracy. But if there's some place that I feel more and more the pension, maybe it's just because of the district that I live in, the demand from Public Works is starting to grow. And I feel like we really do need some help in the acquisition area for right-of-ways, engineers. I'd like to, perhaps see if we can't, as we move forward with this, try to outsource as many projects as possible, but we still need engineers to overlook those plans on the county's behalf. So with that being said, this is something quite possibly well overdue.
I'll second that for discussion.
I'd also be happy to second it. Just for the road work alone, we need some help. Any discussion?
Yeah, I just want to make a comment that I see that Mr. Baird has down here, that he's going to be moving some the park divisions and things like that. So it sounds like he's realigning some staff away from the Public Works, which will make them, I think, more of a probably streamlined department. So I do agree with that too. So I am in favor of this.
Yeah.
We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Now we can move along. Item 11C, General Services. acceptance of 5 new proposed items for additional work for the new county administration building. Do we have a presentation on this?
What are they here
Good morning. Steve Bloom, Project Manager for the County Administration Building. This is an item, as you know, over the past few weeks we've been working to build up our owner's contingency fund within the GMP to create a savings account. And in the prediction that we're going to need to spend some dollars on unforeseen items. And these are 5 of those items. And they're ranged from very small to medium, and we have an 8-inch water line that was shown in the original drawings as being an existing line. It was a 6-inch water line. We wanted to tie it in and make a loop for the building to serve the fire sprinkler system. And late in the game, just before the GMP, we discovered that that line was not active. It was something with as-built drawings or something like that. So anyway, we had to Turner put in an allowance to replace the line, and so that's what this is for, except that when we began discussions with the city and Indian River Farms, the details got a little bit greater, to the point where we now need to spend $11,594 between that amount and the allowance that Turner had set aside. So that's one of the items. The next one is very small. It's a little piece of asphalt that we had to put in when we tore up the existing employee parking lot. We needed 150 square feet of asphalt out in front of this building to accommodate the handicap parking that was displaced. Next is there were some underground utilities on the site that were one utility item was a water line that we knew about, but what we didn't know about was that it was encased in 3 feet of concrete. And so that took a good amount of effort. Plus, there were a number of other pipes and things discovered in the underground that were not shown on the drawings or on the as-built. So this is an item for $22,425. And then finally, the last 2 items are somewhat related. They have to do with the relocated trees. The drawings did not call for an irrigation system in the beginning, and we relocated 20 trees, and we were advised that they really did need to be irrigated for a period of time, some indefinite time, a year or more. And so there was an expense of $3,000 to do that, and that extends not only in the park area that we have temporary park around that, out in front of the Theater Guild, where we put several trees out there, and so those are on automatic timers, and we think maybe we're going to do okay with the survivability of the trees, because that's never 100%, it seems. And then lastly, Hurricane Wilma came along and blew down 10 of those trees, and it was a little difficult getting somebody, even the original contractor, back up here to stand them up and prop them and irrigate them. But we managed to get that done at a cost of $2,600. So in the end, what we have is some additional expenses here for $40,000, $40,218. Currently, in the owner's contingency, we have $280,000, $229, and these changes expense for these changes will come out of that amount, and the GMP does not change. However, the owner's contingency will be reduced by that amount. Any questions?
Thanks, Steve. Any questions? No questions.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Motion carries. Item 11, I. Public Works, FDOT County Incentive Grant Program Agreement and Resolution authorizing the chairman's signature.
Move staff recommendation. I'll second that, Mr. Kenny.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Item 2, FDOT Small County Outreach Program Agreement and Resolution authorizing the chairman's signature.
I'll move to approve, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Under item J1, Utility Services, 5th Street Southwest at Lateral J Canal, directional drill, 8-inch HDPE force main under 36-inch culvert.
Move to approve.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Commissioners' items. Commissioner Wheeler, you had something?
Yeah, I've got, I have 2 items, and one is just, I think that in some of the schools we went to this last year also, but I think just to set a procedure for how we can not communicate but pass information on to each other, and in the backup material there's something from County Attorney Will Collins that would explain that this is in compliance with the Sunshine Law, and it just makes it clear that if we want to get information to a fellow commissioner about something that's happening, we can do that, and the policy would be that it be sent through our executive aide, through Kim or someone on the staff, and that each one of these notices would have the disclaimer on it that would read that this information is distributed for your consideration by whatever commissioner. Please do not provide feedback on this subject to Commissioner so-and-so, or discuss this information provided with any fellow commissioners until the matter is brought forward to the agenda regular scheduled board meeting. And I think the disclaimer is good, so there isn't a mistake made and you just inadvertently say something that we shouldn't say to each other, and this kind of makes it very clear that it's an information matter, and also the press would have access to that information as any other public individual would have. So it's nothing secret. It was just a way to get advance information out on things that may be coming forward in the future.
My personal opinion on that, I know for the 3.5 years I've been sitting here, I don't think I've ever gotten an email one way from another commissioner. I'd just assume keep everything out in the open and out in the public. If you had anything you wanted to bring forward, we have it right here and we discuss it right here. That's what we've done in the past.
Yeah, and I don't find fault with that, Tom, except there are things, I think there's times that, in fact, we just got a communication from Wesley on road work and some information on that that's valuable, and it's nice to have advance notice on that. And a lot of times things that end up in the mailbox or so, or there may be things coming from one commissioner to another staff member that they may not feel comfortable with transmitting us because of confusion over the Sunshine Law. And this just simply clears it up. You don't have to use it, so it won't affect you. But if you do, or any commissioner does want to send information out, then this is a way to do it. And the disclaimer is simply so nobody's going to read something and misinterpret it.
Well, I kind of feel like Tom. I know I don't have to use it, but suppose a commissioner writes to another commissioner, I intend to vote for a new road or 43rd Avenue, or
no, that would.
Then you'd run into
I'm going to bring up something, and which would make
if
it
you're
look
if
like
you're going to communicate how you're going to vote on a future meeting, that would be outside the public arena. That would defeat the purpose of the public.
The fact that he's saying that he intends to bring up an item, that would say to me that, well, he likes that item, he's voting for it. And I think it borders on trying to get around the Sunshine Law. And I don't intend to do anything like that.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
In respect of everything you're saying, and I can't believe I'm about to say this, but it's not a violation of the Sunshine Law to do what Commissioner Wheeler's talking about.
No, it's not.
And I don't think
Or it's not an attempt to get around it either.
Right. And really how this came about is I guess it happened. I'm working on an issue with 512 and 102nd Terrace, as well as some other road issues up in the north end of the county, and it's a lot to bring forward and a lot for me to provide the backup. And I'm talking about things that have been going on since 1996, is how long these issues have been working as I work with the Public Works Department. And all I would like to do is, and I don't know if we need the policy for it, because I firmly believe it's not a violation of the Sunshine Law. Maybe we don't need this policy to do so. I'll just send it to Kim Moore as for your information. And that way, you know, if y'all want to look into it, you can, or if she wants to send it, she can. I don't mind if she sends the press, you know, however we want to do it. There's just a lot of work and a lot of background that I've had to go back and pull myself up to speed on so I can speak intelligently with the people at the Department of Environmental Protection, the Department of Transportation, whenever we have the opportunity to sit in front of them. And then eventually, yes, you're probably going to be asked to make a decision on that. And being able to make the decision just based on a few blurbs in front of you may be difficult, may not. And I know, for example, if Commissioner Wheeler is working on something rather complex, I would like to, whether I agree with him or disagree with him, I'd like to be able to get as much information as he can give me.
I think on that, Commissioner Davis, I know in the past I've always gone to staff, and I've gone with the county administrator and sat down and tried to deal with issues and bring them forward and make that a priority for me and those people that I'm working on with, knowing that I'm going to bring it public. I don't know if at that point in time if I'd feel comfortable trying to send you all that information I'm working on until I get it composed and bring it forward before the public and say, you know, here's what I have. And then I wanted, right. I guess I wanted virgin ears from you all to be able to hear it and go, okay, you know, let me bring my mind forward and have a good, clear discussion on it, as opposed to you have an opportunity to see this information, then beginning to base your opinion on something that you might not know how I'm feeling on it. And that's all I'm saying as far as bringing it right here. And I think over the last couple of years we've done a tremendous job in doing that. And you're absolutely correct. You can send an email one way as long as you don't get a response. Right. So I don't know if we need to have an ordinance or a policy in place for this to take place or not.
I think, and my intent with this basically is quite simple, that if you do get an email and this disclaimer's on it, a red flag goes up and says, you know, don't inadvertently respond to an email from a fellow commissioner. And it's a warning so nobody does it accidentally even and gets themselves in hot water. So it's your pleasure, but I don't see it as anything earth-shattering other than just clearing something up and giving an additional layer of protection to commissioners where they don't inadvertently or by mistake now or in the future violate the sunshine law or the intent of it.
And I don't see it as a big issue. I mean, if you feel comfortable with this, I have no problem with
I have no problem with it. If you feel that way, tell me something you would want to send me an email about.
Well, I think a prime example is the information that Wesley emailed to us last week.
I remember getting it or seeing it. So I don't.
Last week.
Well, we got it on 101st or whatever it is. We're realigning the roads. Just information. It was a map. It was stuff that we've discussed here.
I don't think I got it.
I might not have even sent it to him, Commissioner.
I think I got it. Did I get it through Kim or?
Yeah,
it could be. I think it's public record. We just sometimes I say send it to all the commissioners. They want to be aware of this, so we send it to the board office with please give all the commissioners a copy.
Yeah,
but that's an
not
item.
Not only that, but by forwarding this stuff through administrative aid, it even makes it more open, not less open.
No, I agree with that. I do. Because Kim takes it and then she has to stamp it and puts it in everyone's box, or it becomes an email. Like I said, over the last 3.5 years, I don't think I can think of one time that's taken place, but not to say that that's not changing down the road.
Why don't we do this? Instead of creating a policy on it, do we really need to have it in writing that it gets sent to Kim if we want to disseminate it, and then
that would be Will. And
then once it gets disseminated, prior to that, she'll put her disclaimer on it. Do we need that in writing as a policy, code, or ordinance?
Well, I think Commissioner Wheeler's intent was that this be a policy that she could follow. It doesn't have to be. You just have to be aware that when you communicate, you can't get feedback.
Right.
Yes.
And I wasn't, and I can tell you, I was not aware of that until I went to the new commissioners' seminars. And I could see, for instance, if this is used and there's information communicated over the next several years as people learn the use of this, a new commissioner comes on, perhaps, gets a communication and responds to it because he hasn't been to the school yet, doesn't realize it, and all the disclaimer does is say, look, folks, this is from, whether it's ever used or not, it's just a kind of a fail-safe method so somebody won't accidentally or mistakenly violate sunshine law.
All right, John, what's your pleasure on this? You want to make an issue?
I really don't want to make an issue out of it as much as if we do email something that we want to inform the other commissioners about, it goes to Kim, and she puts just some kind of disclaimer on there for the newbies.
Kim, would you feel more comfortable having this disclaimer is not?
I can see where if I went to a meeting of some sort or other, I might want to give her the backup I got at the meeting and she would distribute it. But I'd be more comfortable telling you about it here. But anyway, I'll go along with whatever you all want to do.
Yeah, I just assume not take attorney's time to draft an ordinance.
Well, I'm not looking for an ordinance. I'm just looking at, we can do a verbal policy.
Yeah, that's where I'd like to go.
Only dealing with our aides.
Exactly.
If you want this as a verbal deal for Kim to use, I have no problem with that.
Yeah, I don't think we need any, any major thing. Just
I think it's use it or don't use it at your own discretion.
Exactly.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that.
All right.
Gary, do you have another item you added?
Yes. We have a public hearing. In fact, we have 2 public hearings scheduled for March 3rd. One is on proportionate share, a workshop, joint meeting with BCC and Planning and Zoning Commission. And then in the afternoon, there's one scheduled for the Newtown Policy Workshop. I'd like to see perhaps the Newtown Policy Workshop moved forward a couple of weeks at least. Both of these are going to entail, I think, a considerable amount of input and comments from us and the public at the workshop. And to have 2 of these on the same day, I think is really pushing it. I've been in some meetings on the proportionate share, and in fact, I was in one just recently in Mr. Baird's office with staff and some other people, and there's a lot of maybe not clear on what it is. I think our staff's clear on it, but anyway, I think those are 2 things that are happening in one day, and they ought to be separated because I think both of them are going to take some considerable time. And the proportionate share comes out of the Senate Bill 360, and that in itself is a horrendous document to get through and understand. I've talked to attorneys that don't understand it, including some of our people that it's not clear, and so I just like to separate them out. I'd like to move one a couple weeks further down the road and deal with them one at a time.
How does staff feel on this? Do they?
Well, we can do anything the board desires. We did this because, there was some discussion about the village concept, and, we thought maybe we should have a workshop because the people were concerned that we were having meetings with the citrus people, which is what we usually do. And we thought it'd be better to have a workshop and get all our information out. It's up to the board.
I'm not disagreeing with the workshop at all. I'm just saying to have both of these on the same day, I think is...
how we thought about the workshop, everyone wants to meet with us in the village concept. It's going to slow us down. We'd rather get it in a workshop because staff, if we have different entities always meeting, we're going to get bogged down where we can't get anything
I'd
done.
just get it all over with in one day, and if we need to come back and set up another meeting, then so be it.
And almost set a secondary date right now in the event that we need to, so that truly there are no parameters or constraints on the board or the workshop. And we will, going ahead and take them from 9 to noon and from 2 to 4 or 5.
We could always run to 4 in the morning.
Yeah, there you go. But it is going to be complex. It is going to be in depth. And there's a couple things that I'd like to go ahead and keep moving forward with. And with the Senate Bill 360, we're still in session. And if there's something that's giving us heartburn, we still have an opportunity to go up there and do something about it, maybe even get it tweaked. And same goes with the Newtown issue. I don't know what staff, other than what I've read in the paper, what staff's brought forward with that. I know there's been some accusations, which I'm not too concerned about the accusations. But what I would like to do is certainly go ahead and start to educate myself on it through these workshops and bring the public in. After Easter, we lose a lot of our residents that may not be able to take advantage of some of these workshops. And again, it is during the legislative session that we can adjust it in the event we need to. And with that, I would like to keep that date for both workshops, and going ahead and Kim, if you would, try to find a secondary date for both in the event that we run over in either one of these. Let's go ahead and start trying to find area on everybody's calendars, because that's not an easy task to do, trying to find everybody's calendar that's available for that time. So let's just go ahead and move forward with it.
I think so too. I agree with that. I think they're both very important subjects, but I think 3 hours on each one is more than enough time to acquaint us with the basics. I don't expect to get into the bill and read every single page and define it. I expect to hear an overview what it does, what it's going to do, and how it will affect us on both subjects.
Well, I've looked at both. I don't know how many of you have seen the, we got the memo on the workshops with the backup material for the new town. We've also gotten quite a stack of paper on Senate Bill 360, and God bless both of you, or all three of you, if you understand what you're reading in the 360 bill. And I think you're going to find it very cumbersome.
Well,
and I don't think you can handle it in one day and have both workshops that are that entailed in one day. So.
I can tell you, Commissioner Wheeler, I happen to serve on the Florida Association of Counties committee that deals with Senate Bill 360, and I agree with you. I'm not saying that I know it all, but I think we have staff here that obviously serves, if I'm not mistaken, in some capacity.
They know it all.
So they do know it all, and
do you understand it all, Bob?
I say let's move forward.
And it's not a matter of knowing it all, it's just we've got to start somewhere. And a workshop is as good as anything. I mean, if I knew it all right now, I'd go ahead and take the vote and let's get it over with. But I don't. So, and my decision to keep the workshops on those 2 days is not because I do understand it all, it's because I want to understand it all.
Well, I have trouble with some things, but not counting to 3, so apparently we're going to leave them the same day.
2. You want me to move one chair over? Help you?
Should I be over this side? No. You better keep the lawyer on your left, right?
I appreciate all the help I get from Wesley.
Good. Do you have any more items under your item?
No, that's it.
Commissioner Sandoval is not here. Commissioner Wesley Davis, do you have anything you would like to?
On my way to Tallahassee today.
Are you?
Yes, sir.
What are you going to do in Tallahassee?
I'll save the county.
Seriously.
Good.
Right?
Do what we couldn't do a couple weeks ago.
Maybe the public would like to hear what you're going to say. What
absolutely.
are your issues?
The issues, we're going to go up, have the opportunity to meet with the Secretary of Transportation, talk with some individuals from the Department of Environmental Protection about the alignment of 101st and 102nd Terrace up on the north side of 512. And then, of course, there's some other legislative issues that are going on with some joint meetings with the Chambers of Commerce that you read about in the paper.
Tom?
I have 9 or 10 items that I forgot to put on the
okay.
on B. No, I don't. I'm fine.
You're not going to Tallahassee?
I am going to Tallahassee.
Okay.
I'm doing all the opposite of what Wesley's doing.
That'll be new.
Well, I had something to add, but I'll wait till Sandra gets back about getting the floor and interruptions at the meetings, but I'll hit that some other day.
Well, I can move over and answer. Sure.
No, it was that bad press I got last week. Okay, I think we're to the end. Emergency Service District, Solid Waste District, we have the item B1, 14B1, Northern Expansion Area Plan.
Move staff recommendation.
I'll second that.
Would you like to make a presentation?
We can make it very short.
Make it very short.
Very short.
For the times when we do this, just adopt something, I'd like to know that the public understands what we're doing here.
I think what I'd like to do, just to kind of make it brief in the process, just give you a quick picture of what our system looks like today, what our current planning process, but more importantly, what our recommendation is. Let me just say, first of all, any planning mechanism has a little bit of an environmental, I mean, you've got to take a look at things and be prepared to make adjustments as time goes on. The real question is, really, as it says up here, should the Solid Waste Disposal District basically maintain its current direction of the northern expansion? That's really what's on the table. We're going to make a recommendation on that regarding that very same thing. Okay. Just real quick, this is a picture of what we're looking at the landfill to orient yourself to the north, I-95. You're going to see Oslo Road to the right, 74th Avenue at the bottom of the picture. Roughly, if you picture where this is the divider point right here, C5 canal runs right at this point. Okay, next. We're just going to, this will give you an idea of where we're currently working, what our proposed planning is. The tan is currently where we're working. All of this area is where you see, that's the current active landfill. We do own some property to the north, about 30 acres on the, to the west, on the west side of 95. For the last 15, nearly 20 years, the county has been in a planning process to look towards working to the northern section, literally to the toe of Oslo. And in the process of this, our planning process has been to be able to expand the construction and demolition, what's known as C&D, the Class 1 system,
All of that would be basically built north of the C5 canal in that area, right directly adjacent to Oslo Road. Again, this is sort of what it would look like as it begins to build out over time. The section north of the C5 canal would begin to be literally one single piece of landfill from what you currently see north to Oslo Road. That's been the planning horizon, again, for about 15 years or so. We've actually acquired 250 acres. The section north of that, we acquired the MWI Pump Company, the Perfection Trust Company, some additional lands that made this available. We go to the next one. Ultimately, in the year 2055, give or take a little bit, this is our planned build-out. Basically, again, you would see the entire section, literally to Oslo Road, would be covered with landfill at this point. In the last year and a half, we've seen a little bit of a change. Obviously, the hurricane activity has basically thrown us for a little bit of a curved loop there. We've had to make some adjustments to take into consideration the massive amount of landfill changes. And in the process of this, what has been our projected growth pattern has now changed dramatically. The blue graph really represents what we had planned. The red graph represents reality. Pay close attention to the red numbers. The red numbers really give you an idea of roughly the changes. Guess what took place? Hurricanes Francis, Jean, Wilma. I'd like to just stop just for a second at this point. First of all, let me introduce the people we've got here in case you have any specific question. Debbie Perez, I think most people know Debbie Perez. She's the managing operator for the landfill for the waste management. We have Dr. Tanhum Goldschmidt. He's the assistant managing director out there. We also have Marty Lewis with Camp Dresser McKee. They're our engineering firm that's basically been with us for quite a number of years. If you look at the red numbers there, we had to make some adjustments after Hurricane Francis and Jean, and then we got hit again with, of course, Hurricane Wilma. We've had to make some adjustments with respect to where we place our construction and demolition debris, and there have been some questions by the public on this, so I want to just take a quick moment to clarify. Historically, for the last several months, if you drive north on 95 or even south on 95 and you look to the landfill, you'll see what has been some construction demolition activity on the landfill that has previously been closed. That's to accommodate the hurricane debris. We ran out of space where we were currently working and had to make adjustments over there. I want to clarify one thing, and Debbie, of course, can add some specific information. Unfortunately, we moved faster than we were able to fill it up with dirt. So what you see right now is literally a moving sliver as the activity begins to move along the face of that section there that's adjacent to 95. You'll see a little bit of open activity, and then rapidly behind it, the dirt basically closes in. So you've got a moving couple of slivers until it completes itself. The good news is that that activity will be completed roughly in the latter part of June, first part of July. They'll complete that section, and it'll be gone. That will be gone. Okay. Here's why we're here today. 15 years ago, 20 years ago, the best laid plans of future development, the landfill was kind of out in the boonies. I think for all basic premises, the planning process was to locate it where the least number of impact associated with development would be. Unfortunately, everything is being developed around the landfill right now. To the north of it, you've got development, whether it's in the form of the current aerodrome system or whether you're talking about ranchettes that are being under construction or under development. To the east of it, ranchettes. To the south of it, more development. To the west of it, more development. We've got flying ranches. All of this is taking place, and this is just part of reality, part of the process. So the real question now comes about, is our planning process really the best thing to do? One of the things we know and we hope for, we cross our fingers that the DOT process and perhaps in some of the discussions with the county administrator and the commissioner when they go to Tallahassee is to begin to culminate the I-95 Oslo interchange. The concern that staff has is it appropriate at this time to basically consider moving forward into that northern sector, or is there a better opportunity? That's what we really want to put on the table. Okay. I could tell you that the timing of basically permitting the northern section, we're in process. We could do it. We could continue the process. We could permit it. We're a little bit concerned about the fact that the landfill is filling faster than what we might be able to permit that northern sector adjacent to Oslo. Basically, there are other alternatives. Let me just flip, and again, looking at this C5 canal, basically bisects the system. When you currently drive into the landfill, you basically, here's the administration building. You'll basically see at this point the little scale house in this area. Our proposal, and this is what we want to put on the table, this whole section right in here has been acquired by the Solid Waste Disposal District. The county owns that section. All of this from this point down roughly to this area. We're suggesting that maybe the planning process wasn't wrong, but maybe we need to rethink it, and perhaps instead of moving into this area, maybe we ought to consider going into this area basically within the landfill proper that you see right in this minute. And the reasoning being is twofold. First of all, it's already permitted in the sense that the basic conceptual permitting is there. We don't have to go through a lot of effort and a lot of work to sort of reinvent the permitting wheel in the process of this thing. We can move rather quickly. We can meet the time elements associated with it. It allows you as a commission to be in a position to set aside this. It can still be used for later landfill activity. Doesn't preclude it. But it also opens the door for other alternative processes. If the interchange takes place, it opens the door for potential other alternative mechanisms, whether at some later date you want to develop it as a commercial activity or whatever the case may be. The door is open. So what staff is recommending at this point is let's forestall moving in this direction. Put it on the backboards. Move over into the area that's within the landfill proper itself. Put us in a position to where we can move quicker, actually be in a position to tuck it within the existing facility as you see it. One thing I'm also going to mention, there has been some questions regarding the biosolid system. I want to emphasize a couple of clarities. First of all, since 1993, we've been taking our sludge to the landfill. It's important to recognize that this is not a new process. It's been taken over there. What we're talking about is literally tucked way behind the system over here are a couple buildings and a tank. That's what we're talking about. We're not talking about a large facility. It's literally tucked within the system here. The process that would be involved is a different type of technology. It's very much similar to what you would use in your home clothes dryer. It's all set up totally different than what would historically have been what you see at the 49th Street system over there on Gifford. So let's go and move. Ultimately, the build-out would look something like this. You would basically concentrate on this area that you currently see within the landfill proper. We have this additional space that the county already owns, the solid waste system already owns, adjacent to the jail facility there. That can be expanded more into landfill activity. Okay. Sort of in conclusion, I think it's kind of one of these things that, again, I want to emphasize the planning process was valid at the time. Nothing wrong with the planning process. But I think the activities of growth within the county have now put us in a situation where we need to re-ask some questions on this thing. Are there any downsides? Well, here are the downsides. 2055 is the current expected build-out, give or take. You know, nobody has a real crystal ball in terms of the original planning process. Should we basically opt to go as we're recommending, staff is recommending that we go to the section, back up just a little bit, how much, if you will. If we opt, rather than going over in this section, but we opt to complete it as shown in here, the life expectancy will be somewhere around 20 years, 25 years, as opposed to 50 years. Is that a problem? Well, probably not, because here's the situation. First of all, at about 15 or 20 years from now, the technology for landfills is going to change. The process of which you currently use may be totally different. Secondarily, many counties in the eastern coastal sections, such as Martin County to the south of us, has made a choice. They made a clear choice that basically, rather than continue the long life of the landfill there, they basically outsourced it to Okeechobee. There are other landfills being opened in the center part of the state as we speak. So there will be future options. We're not going to close the door on ourselves in this sense. But I think what we want to try to do is recognize some flexibility that may be there for the county rather than jumping into this northern expansion area at this point. What we would recommend is that if the commission gives us an agreement to this direction, what we want to do is then modify our current master plan to reflect this direction of travel. We don't have to make an immediate decision, and we're not recommending we make an immediate decision on what we do with the property basically north of the C5 canal. It's extremely valuable property. I'll just say this from the get-go. So we are recommending one of the facilities, MWI Pump Company, where we did purchase the property from them, we are recommending that we would negotiate and extend their contract a little bit, a new contract to let them stay within the county. I know I've compressed a lot, as much as I could within a short period of time. We could probably talk for quite a bit of time on this issue. But it is something that we would like to see the Commission give us the approval to move forward in modifying our planning process, recognizing that there still would be some flexibility. It doesn't lock us into any changes.
Well, I'll start. You and I discussed this, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago, and we talked about that northern property that we've bought that very expensive, and displaced a couple of businesses, or one and the other one eventually. And now you're saying abandon that property, and I know it is valuable, and I guess we could sell it off to a shopping mall or something who would probably go in there when the interchange happens. But then after the 20 years that we have on the existing site, where are we going to go? You say that the technologies may change or we can ship it to Okeechobee. But why don't we use part of that, stay away from Oslo Road, because surely that'll be a commercial corridor one day, and just stay back. What's the depth of that piece? And I wish you put your properties
north
to up.
North
I have
is
to look
the
at
right,
it this way.
west 95 here.
Yeah, I know that, but
If you could shoot your pointer.
we can't
On
see
this
that
one?
pointer over here. We can see it over there.
Okay, all right, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
People in the audience may have to crane a little bit, but
Okay, Oslo Road running.
right. How deep is that property from north to south?
Quarter mile.
Quarter mile.
Isn't it?
Goes all the way to the white line.
20. It's somewhere in the neighborhood of about 1,500 feet.
1,260 to be exact.
Yeah.
1,360, excuse me.
Yeah.
Suppose we were able to use some of that and still leave it clear of Oslo Road.
We could.
not an
And
option?
let me clarify one thing. We're not proposing that this be abandoned and a decision be made today as to what to do with this site. We're not proposing that today. What we're suggesting is simply to, instead of moving immediately from this point to this point.
I understand that part, Eric. I'm saying that why abandon it? Why not go ahead and get it permitted, and then in the future we'd have it just in case? We may very well decide to sell it off to a developer or something.
We can do that. We're currently in the process of completing the permit process. Now, there's a downside potentially to permitting all of this. When you permit this, there's certain sections of wetlands that you're basically ending up having to set aside. You're locking that up. What you do, you basically define what the area would actually look like. Again, there's certain set-asides at this point just west of the Ocean Spray area that you would have to literally set aside as part of your permitting process. Not to say that's a bad thing, but when you do that, you're basically, if you ever change your mind at a later date and say, well, I want to do something totally different, you've got to go back and rechange what was originally permitted on this. We have that ability to continue with the permitting process and permit just as shown. We can do that. But the downside is, and we've got CDM here with us today that can answer that, this was supposed to be a stormwater pond. We would show it as a stormwater pond. This section in here would be set aside in perpetuity as a wetlands.
Okay, that's the original plan. What I'm saying is abandon that plan. keep some of it. It doesn't have to be a mound of garbage. It can be for the scale house or the administrative offices or something like that. Just leave our business away from Oslo Road. Isn't that a good idea?
We could do that.
Settlement Pond could be in there, and who knows what all, but except for garbage. And then you could use this site for completely fill it up with mounds of debris.
We could talk to the regulatory agencies and see if that, and it's feasible, and we'll do that. We were just mainly concerned that it's going to become a gateway to the county as a new interchange, and we wanted not it to be, on landfill right up against it.
Right. Well,
and
that's what I discussed with Eric. We don't want to see a mound of garbage taking off from 20 feet off of Oslo Road, by all means. But we could be back 600 feet. It's, 1,320 feet all the way from Oslo to the dump now.
As Joe said, nothing prevents us from going ahead and working with DEP in terms of what we could do that doesn't totally take away options for us at this point for this section in here. We can move forward with that permitting process to at least continue those discussions with DEP.
Yeah.
Our most important element today is really to get approval. The master plan defines that you go to this next step. We're really here today more to get permission to say, okay, rather than continuing this master plan development over here, let us move into this section because of the time elements associated. Let's build some options into the process that we could work with over here. We can continue working with DEP with respect to the permitting process to ensure that we haven't lost any options over there. We want to keep our options open. But today we really want to just simply get permission to, in lieu of moving here directly, that we move over here, build us some time to do some thinking out of the process.
I'll go along with that.
That's smart.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
What's the cost of continuing to permit, and if we weren't going to use it for landfill, why would we continue the cost and the expense of permitting it? And if we were going to do as the Chairman suggested, use that for administrative buildings or something like that, we wouldn't need to permit it, would we?
Well,
I think we should look at a feasibility of looking. Well, maybe we should come back with a feasibility of looking at that and our alternatives to blend it in. What we're scared to do with it right now is that we want to leave that option totally open, because if that becomes a major interchange, we could be criticized by the public of, we want it to be a very nice, aesthetically pleasing, it could become commercial in the long run, it could be a nice gateway. And that was our, we looked at it and said, we need to make this change right away, because we saw that we had the new expansion coming right up to Oslo, which would be terrible, and that was our main function.
I think we need to. I think we need to make a decision whether or not we're going to use that in the future. Because, in my opinion, with the growth in the county and what's happening in the interchange, I think is going to happen in the next 10 years from everything I see, and it's either move forward, permit it now, or never. And quite frankly, I'd be in favor of never at this point, because I think it is valuable property. We are going to have an interchange there. Oslo is going to be a major east-west road, and I don't see the advantage of continuing to spend money to permit something that I don't think the political pressures in the future as we grow out there are going to allow to happen.
I don't disagree with you on that. In fact, that's one of the reasons and why we're really talking about this today. I think what Joe has suggested makes good sense. Why don't you let us as staff, basically, if we can get the first decision made, okay, instead of going to the north, go ahead into Plan B. Let us bring back to the Commission perhaps a conceptual idea, a series of options that we could do, and the timing and the costs associated with continuing that. We can do that fairly, in a reasonable time period. We'll actually be talking with our consultants at our own staff as far as this sort of thing goes. Again, not to sound redundant, but our concern is we're so time compressed. That's why we wanted to make this initial decision. Rather than going here, let's go here, and then let's combine it with what might make common sense.
So you need an approval to move it.
We would like.
we would
What's
request
the motion say that we have on the floor?
approve staff recommendation and move forward with, instead of going with the phase to the front on Oslo, going to do the infill.
And they'll come back with us on a plan of what
Right.
might be a good use for the property we're not going to use for garbage.
We'll come back with
At
the
least part of
feasibility and costs associated with that.
And if we intend to eventually sell off the corridor up there for somebody.
That may be one of the options that we
You'll tell us about that. Okay, we have a motion then.
Mr. Chairman.
Is there anyone in the audience? I hear some people in the back who are concerned with this item. I didn't know what you were, may or may not have been here for. Go ahead, Wesley.
Yeah, I just want
Come to the mic, and Wesley has a point he wants to make.
I really want to just let, to say to Mr. Olson and his staff, this is you did a good job coming before us on this, and I appreciate it, because we've had some situations where the residents around the landfill are complaining about the landfill. And, well, it's no different than residents around the airport complaining about the airport, and that's to be expected. But I really do appreciate your diplomatic approach to this. You could have stood up in front of them and said, here's the 30-year plan, tough. But I really see you as trying to do something that you really see technology changing. I wouldn't be surprised in 50 years if we're not there digging up our landfill and utilizing the solids in there for something else one day. And I believe that in 15 years or 20 years, as you mentioned, that we'll no longer be putting our solid waste in River County. With this being a future interchange, with this being a gateway into our community, I've seen firsthand what it's like for Felsner to have a convenience center at the gateway into their community, much less a Class 1 landfill. And I appreciate your diplomatic approach in buying us some time on this. Do I see the second phase of this into the north coming into fruition? No, I don't. I eventually seeing that as something other than landfill, just based on the growth that's around it, and I can appreciate and sympathize with the people that have to put up with the dump right now. But it's a good approach that you came to this commission with.
Yes, sir. We appreciate you waiting until the very end of the meeting.
No, that's fine. That's fine. I'm Tom Cowan, President of Flying Ranches Homeowners Association. I probably have written to several of the commissioners, Commissioner Wheeler, for sure. We are here. Several of our residents are here. We're a fly-in community out west of 95, about a mile west. We are concerned because of the smells that have been coming ever since Hurricane Wilma. I know we've talked to the landfill personnel about this, and I think we've also sent letters to Commissioner Lowther and to Joe Baird about the conditions the last few months since Hurricane Wilma. The smells when the winds are blowing are so bad they were last fall that you couldn't even be outside in your yard around our houses out there. We are a community of homes in the $500 to $1 million range. So, and there's several new subdivisions, 10 acres, that are going in on 86th Avenue in that area out there. And we are very concerned about that. We were concerned too, and we're glad to hear what was said about the sludge plant, the moving of the sludge plant from Gifford to out to the landfill area out there. Our concern would only be what kind of odors are going to be developed off that. I mean, I had envisioned that we're going to have a sprinkler system that is going to be sending water around from decay waste out there and polluting the air even more than we've had now. But I think the plan that you've come up with, staff's come up with here, sounds like a very logical plan, and we're very glad to hear that you're very concerned about what's going on. Our other concern was really about how the waste was handled, and the beautification of committee and everything that goes on in Indian River County, and then you drive by I-95 and see garbage bags just dumped 50 feet high right up to, we're within probably 25 feet of the fence on 95 now. So we were very concerned about the appearance to the community, and especially if we're going to have a new interchange at Oslo Road. So we're very happy to hear what you're doing here, and we appreciate your efforts. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Is there anyone else like to express their thoughts? Ladies? No? Eric? Okay, we have a motion to do exactly what you presented, and hopefully you'll be working on the other northern piece. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0. And we are adjourned.